experiments. I won't focus on the details on purpose. They're available publicly, and they're worse than any horror movie. But to understand who we're dealing with, we need to at least take a quick look behind the doors of the camp laboratories. Dr. Zygmunt Rascher, one of those who officially worked for the SS and conducted experiments on people in a pressure chamber, literally. Prisoners were placed in a sealed capsule to simulate conditions at an altitude of 20,000 meters, without oxygen, without protection. They observed how long a person survived, monitored heartbeats, and noted when it stopped. Survivors of the pressure chamber were then exposed to freezing conditions. They were immersed in icy water, their body temperature was monitored, and their brain reactions were tracked. Then they tried to revive them. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Everything was documented. And this wasn't cruelty for the sake of cruelty, it was calculated. They were interested in the limit, where the body ends, where the spirit begins, how to use pain as a tool. There is a theory that the Nazis were looking for a way to rewrite the boundaries of the human mind, to create a soldier who could withstand extreme conditions, or on the contrary, to turn a person into something else, controllable, reprogrammed. And there was also the Die Glock project, the bell, a device shrouded in secrets, rumors, and speculation. It was created deep in Silesia. Inside there was supposedly a heavy liquid with the codename Zerum 525. Its purpose is still unknown. Some say anti-gravity, others say time experiments. But most importantly, they worked on it seriously, underground in secret, until the very end. The more I read about this, the more I keep asking the same question. Did they really believe they could go beyond human limits? Or were they just desperately trying to escape from what was inside them? A 2,500-year-old helmet and Dacian treasures. This golden helmet is one of the most famous artifacts of Dacian culture, dating back to around 450 BC. It is known as the Helmet of Quetzalcoatl and is considered not only a work of ancient jewelry art, but also a symbol of power. Decorated with eyes, snakes, and mythological scenes, it may have belonged to a priest or a leader who played a sacred role in Dacian society. The helmet seems to look at enemies, instilling fear and protecting its owner. On January 25, 2025, this helmet became the victim of a daring robbery. Several unique exhibits were stolen from the Drents Museum in Assen, the Netherlands, where the land, gold, and silver exhibition was being held, including this helmet and 3 royal Dacian bracelets. All the items came from the National History Museum of Romania. The loss of these artifacts was a real blow to cultural heritage. Petrified soldiers. What would you think if I told you that in the USSR, a UFO was shot down and 23 soldiers were literally turned to stone? No, this isn't science fiction. It's from a declassified CIA document archived after the Soviet Union collapsed. The location is unspecified, and the time is the late 1980s during Soviet troop exercises. A low-flying object appears in the sky, resembling a disc-shaped craft. One volley, and it's shot down. The craft crashes near the military base. A few minutes later, 5 beings emerge from it. They are short, with disproportionately large heads and black eyes. They merge into a single entity. A high-pitched buzzing sound is heard, a flash, and everyone nearby turns to stone. 2 survivors were standing in the shadow. Later, the report states the soldiers' remains and shipwreckage were sent to a classified scientific base near Moscow. The researchers allegedly found that the structure of the bodies resembled limestone, as if their molecules had been rewritten. Official science, of course, will call this nonsense, but in the CIA document it's written in black and white. If this is true, we are dealing with beings possessing technologies beyond our understanding. A pyramid that sank before history. Near Yonaguni Island, at a depth of 30 meters on the ocean floor, lies a stone pyramid, regular steps, terraces, arches, and passages. Everything looks as if it's a building, not random rocks. The structure is about 10,000 years old. That means it was built even before the Sumerians, Egyptians, and the first cities. Scientists are still debating. Some are convinced it's a natural formation. Others believe Yonaguni is proof of a previously unrecognized civilization. If they are right, it could completely change our understanding of when and how human history began. What if this isn't just a mistaken trace of history, but a trace of some civilization? What if there's a history hidden beneath this ocean that we don't know about. An engineering marvel in Egypt. Once again, ancient Egypt continues to amaze modern researchers. This time, an astonishing tunnel was discovered beneath a temple in the ancient city of Toposiris Magna, which experts are calling a geometric marvel. The tunnel was found at a depth of 13 meters. It is 1,305 meters long and about 2 meters high. It is carved into sandstone, and its design is reminiscent of the famous Eupalinian tunnel on the Greek island of Samos, which is considered an engineering marvel. The exact name of the tunnel is still unknown, but some of its sections are flooded with water. Archaeologist Martinez, who has been searching for the lost tomb of Cleopatra VII since 2004, believes that the tunnel could lead to important discoveries. Toposiris Magna was founded around 280 BC by Ptolemy II, one of Cleopatra's ancestors. Archaeologists believe that the temple was dedicated to Osiris and Isis, deities with whom Cleopatra was closely associated. The team also plans to explore the Mediterranean Sea, as a series of earthquakes between 320 and 1303 caused part of the temple to collapse into the water. Earlier in my videos, I talked about how tunnels connecting Lake Mariout to the Mediterranean Sea were discovered. The Glozelle Tablet. In 1924, in the small village of Glozelle in France, clay tablets with mysterious symbols and images were discovered, which sparked heated debates in the scientific community. These artifacts, found by a young farmer named Emile Frat, turned out to be so unusual that it was impossible to link them to any known ancient civilization. The tablets contain symbols and images resembling ancient scripts, but their origin and meaning remain unclear. Some researchers have hypothesized that the Glozelle tablets could be evidence of a lost or unknown culture that developed in this region thousands of years ago. Another more radical theory suggests that these tablets could be traces of extraterrestrial intervention, although there is very little evidence to support this. The tablets' authenticity is still in question. Since their discovery, scientists have conducted numerous studies to determine whether they are genuine ancient artifacts or skillful forgeries. To this day, neither version has been definitively confirmed, and the Glozelle tablets remain one of the most mysterious archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Bosnian pyramids. Mysterious structures have been discovered in Bosnia, which some researchers believe could be ancient constructions around 12,000 years old. These massive formations first attracted the attention of archaeologists and enthusiasts in the early 2000s when Bosnian archaeologist and businessman Samir Osmanagic pointed them out. He claims that the pyramids were created by an ancient civilization and that they are much older than the well-known pyramids in Egypt. The complex features several pyramidal structures, including the Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, and the Pyramid of the Dragon. The Pyramid of the Sun is the largest and reaches a height of about 220 meters, making it one of the tallest pyramids in the world. Osmanagic and his team conducted numerous studies, including ground-penetrating radar scans and excavations, claiming to have discovered traces of ancient tunnels and stone blocks that indicate the pyramids are man-made. However, not all scientists agree with this point of view. Many geologists and archaeologists claim that these structures are natural formations created by geological processes. They point out that the geological structure of the region and the shape of the pyramids can be explained by natural forces, such as erosion and tectonic movements. They remain one of the most mysterious and debated discoveries in modern archaeology. Jade Mask. Archaeologists made an important discovery in the dense tropical forests of Guatemala at a place called Chichiquitam. They discovered an interwoven jade mask, which is believed to have belonged to an unknown Maya king who lived about 1,700 years ago. This find may shed light on the religious devotion and royal succession of the Maya during the early Classic period. It also supports the hypothesis that members of Maya royal families may have been enslaved by more powerful dynasties of Mesoamerica. In addition to the mask, archaeologists found a skull, teeth, a stone box shaped like a skull, and numerous offerings in Chichiquitam, including shells, bones, and shiny pieces of jade. Alexander Takovinin, a specialist in Maya epigraphy, helped decipher the glyphs on the bones and identified the remains as those of the ruler Itzam Kukai Baklam, while the deity depicted on the mask turned out to be Yaxwayab Chak. He is the embodiment of the Maya god of storms. The tomb of an unknown pharaoh. In Egypt, near the city of Abydos, archaeologists discovered the tomb of a pharaoh that is about 3,600 years old. It is located 7 meters deep in an ancient necropolis known as the Mountain of Anubis. The tomb turned out to be almost empty. Most likely it was looted back in ancient times. The name of the pharaoh was written on the plaster at the entrance, but it has not survived to this day. Scientists suggest that it could be one of the lesser-known rulers, such as Sennaib or Pentageni, who are mentioned in other sources but whose tombs have not yet been found. The tomb dates back to the Second Intermediate Period, a difficult time in Egypt's history when the country was divided into several kingdoms and was in political chaos. One of these regional kingdoms was the Abydos dynasty, whose representatives may have been buried in this area. Interestingly, the new tomb is built into the complex of the earlier and more influential pharaoh, Neferhotep I, and its architecture resembles both the tombs of the Middle Kingdom and later ones. Artifacts in the tomb. When I first saw this discovery, I had the feeling that someone had deliberately planted artifacts there. It looked so unbelievable. A burial from the time of World War II in Poland in the Tukola forest. Everything is standard. Remnants of German uniforms, equipment, and a dog tag. But next to the body there were stone tools from the Mesolithic era, ceramics from the Neolithic period, and Roman coins. Genuine, verified, not fake. I spent a long time trying to understand the official explanation. There's only one version. They say it's just a coincidence. It just so happened that ancient tribes used to live in that place, and the soldier died right there. Yeah, sure, just a coincidence. Just like the fact that this place had been an area of interest to the Nazi archaeological intelligence since the beginning of the war. They were obsessed with ancient civilizations. It wasn't just an interest, it was a real mania. Anin Urbis sent expeditions to Tibet, Iran, and Africa. But even in Europe, they were actively searching for evidence to support their theory that the Aryans were not just a people, but the heirs of an ancient world empire. And here, in this grave, there is an SS man and objects that are 2,000 years old. I can't shake the thought, what if this isn't a coincidence? What if he was actually part of some program, testing, relocation, maybe even guarding? The Nazis attached ritual significance to objects from the past. They believed that ancient artifacts were keys, not to history, but to power. Maybe this soldier didn't die by accident. Maybe he died because of what he was guarding. Religion, UFOs, and cosmic mythology. Today we divide the world into believers and skeptics. But there's one area where faith and science strangely intertwine. That's ufology. Basically, UFOs are a new form of an old religion. Only instead of wealth, it's beings from other star systems. Belief in aliens has become what belief in angels used to be. They come from the heavens. They are more intelligent than us and often bring revelations. Philosopher Paul Kurz called ufology the mythology of the space age. He said people need to feel that they are not alone, that someone is watching and maybe guiding us. In the past, that was God's role. Today, it's our cosmic brothers. Psychologist Carl Jung wrote back in the 1950s that UFO images are a projection of the collective unconscious. Like, if in ancient times a person saw a shining angel in the sky, today he would see an alien ship there. The only difference is in cultural interpretation, but the archetype is the same, contact with something higher. But there are also those who went further. Since the 1970s, real UFO religions have started to appear around the world. For example, the movement of Rael, the founder of the Elohim Temple, he claimed that he personally met with aliens and even visited their planet. And there are dozens of such movements. People sincerely believe that we are the product of genetic engineering created by an extraterrestrial civilization. Some are waiting for the second coming, others for the return of their creators. A mysterious substance in a coffin. In the northwest of China, in the Xinjiang region, archaeologists made a shocking discovery. In an ancient coffin about 3,600 years old where Bronze Age mummies were found, a mysterious substance was discovered on the neck of one of the women. Today, scientists are confident that this is the oldest cheese in the world. Researchers extracted DNA from this substance and found out that it is kefir cheese made from cows' and goats' milk. This discovery is important for understanding the origin of kefir and the evolution of probiotic bacteria. Xiaomei Fu from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, together with her colleagues, analyzed the bacteria, yeast, and proteins in the sample, which made it possible to identify the ancient cheese. Research shows that kefir cheese was important for people of that time. It may have been placed in the grave as part of burial customs, as food for the afterlife. Interestingly, two types of cheese were found in the coffin, one made from goat's milk, the other from cow's milk. Genetic studies have shown that the microorganisms in the cheese are similar to modern kefir strains found in East Asia and Tibet. This raises the question of kefir's geographical origin. It was previously believed that kefir originated in the Caucasus, but new data suggest the possibility of a second source in Xinjiang. These results show that kefir spread around the world in different ways, and its history is closely linked to the evolution of human culture. Metal objects from Gayasa Lamana caves in Ecuador have attracted the attention of not only archaeologists, but also fans of mysticism and ufology for many years. The story of the discovery of metal objects in these caves is shrouded in mystery and mysticism. According to legends, metal plates were discovered in Lamana, engraved with symbols resembling modern diagrams, maps, and even technical drawings. These discoveries became the basis for hypotheses about the existence of an unknown civilization in the distant past that possessed highly advanced technologies, or about contacts between ancient people and extraterrestrial beings. Supporters of these theories claim that such complex and detailed symbols could not have been created with primitive tools and must indicate more advanced knowledge. Some researchers even suggest that the plates could have served as star maps or technological instructions left by extraterrestrials. However, most scientists are quite skeptical about these findings. There is no convincing evidence that the metal objects from Lamana actually date back to ancient times. Some experts point to possible traces of modern metalworking and the inconsistency of these artifacts with the styles and technologies known in ancient Ecuador. Moreover, there are no reliable dating results, and the context in which these items were found is missing, which further undermines their authenticity. Archaeologists believe that these artifacts may have been created in a later period, possibly as part of a hoax or to attract tourists. Thus, despite the fascinating and mysterious stories about the metal objects from the Lamana caves, their origin and significance remain in question. The story of the Lamana caves is an example of how myths and legends can intertwine with reality, creating fascinating but often unreliable accounts of our past. A mysterious accessory from the future. Archaeologists have discovered wall carvings depicting objects that resemble modern handbags. Some of these images are about 12,000 years old. The earliest ones were found in Turkey, in the ruins of the megalithic temple at Göbekli Tepe, where strange images are engraved on the columns of the ancient temple. Similar motifs have been found in Mexico, Iraq, and South America, which raises many questions about the possible use of such objects by ancient civilizations. Although the images resemble handbags or clutches, experts believe that the ancient ruins actually depict baskets. Some believe that the concept of the handbag might have been invented by ancient civilizations. The first modern handbag appeared in 1841 in England, created by Samuel Parkinson. The problem is that the Göbekli Tepe temple was built in 9000 BC, and its builders were unlikely to know about such an accessory. Another ancient example of a handbag was found in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, written about 5,000 years ago, where gods are holding a small square object symbolizing prosperity. Archaeologists have indeed found remnants of baskets and tool bags used by the ancient Egyptians, but they still cannot say for sure what is depicted in the hieroglyphs. Similar discoveries were made in Iraq, among the ruins of a Syrian palace built between 883 and 859 BC, where a winged jinn is depicted holding an object resembling a handbag. Historian David Miano believes that these figures, called Apkallu, were minor deities who carried buckets for water and sacred date palms, not handbags. Ancient buckets similar to the engravings have indeed been found in Iraq. Similar motifs have also been found in Mexico, among the Toltec ruins, where giant statues hold objects resembling handbags. These statues were created around 750 AD. A pot with burnt porridge. In one of the oldest villages in Germany, in Oldenburg, LA7 archaeologists discovered a unique treasure, fragments of an ancient pot. This find tells us about the culinary preferences of our ancestors more than 5,000 years ago. They also cooked porridge. Lucy Kubiak-Martin, the famous archaeobotanist, shared some impressive details. Chemical analysis of the fragments revealed traces of grains such as spelt, emmer, and barley, as well as protein-rich seeds of goosefoot, similar to quinoa. Interestingly, sprouted grains were found, which indicates a lack of knowledge of ancient grain drying methods. This is the first case of finding traces of food preparation on ceramics in Neolithic Germany. A non-biblical miracle. The famous biblical miracle when Moses supposedly parted the waters of the Red Sea to lead the Israelites was considered supernatural intervention for many centuries. However, modern scientists offer a much more down-to-earth explanation, and it is no less impressive. A new study has shown that about 3,500 years ago, weather and geographical conditions could very well have created the effect described in the Old Testament. Scientists from the U.S. National Center for Atmospheric Research used a computer model to prove that with a wind speed of about 100 km/h blowing in the right direction, the water could temporarily recede, exposing land up to 5 km wide, and then just as suddenly return like a tsunami. The biblical account says that the Lord made the sea move with a strong east wind all night. Researchers are convinced that the wind is the key to the mystery. As the crossing site, the shallow flat Gulf of Suez is now considered more likely than the deep Gulf of Aqaba because such a phenomenon could have occurred there. It is also known that in 1789, Napoleon led his army across the shallow waters there during low tide, but nearly drowned on the way back.
Есть и другие гипотезы, например,
The departure might not have been across the Red Sea, but through Tanis, the so-called Reed Sea, which is mentioned in the original Hebrew. Or the water could have receded because of an earthquake and tsunami, as happens in modern disasters when a wave pulls the water far from the shore. One way or another, the secret of the ancient miracle may not be about breaking the laws of nature, but about the ability to precisely calculate the time, the place, and to have faith. Egypt and the swastika. The more I studied the archives about Ahnenerbe, the more I realized that it was important for the Nazis not just to find ancient artifacts, but to write themselves into a grand historical past, to create a narrative where the Aryans were not just a people, but the direct heirs of the most ancient civilizations. Egypt held a special place in this system not because of the pyramids and mummies, but because of its symbols and rituals. They called the swastika the sun cross. For them, it was not just a sign, it was a code. The swastika is indeed found in the cultures of India, Tibet, and China, and in Egypt at least as indirect symbolism. The movement of the sun, the four directions, the cult of Ra, they found confirmation of their ideas in this. Sometimes it was far-fetched, sometimes quite convincing. Before the war, some researchers associated with Ahnenerbe were indeed in Egypt, unofficially. They were interested in ancient books, burial rituals, ideas about the afterlife, and how the Egyptians connected power, magic, and order. The Nazis saw this as a system, not a religion, but a mechanism of control, as if the ancients knew something that was forgotten, and they came to restore it. I looked at photos from those expeditions, people in SS uniforms standing by temples, stone bas-reliefs decorated with runes. It wasn't just imitation, it was an attempt to create their own religion, a new one, not relying on symbols that inspire strength. When Hitler talked about bringing back the past, he didn't mean Prussia. He was looking further, into millennia, into civilizations that had disappeared but left a trace. And he wanted that trace to lead to them. A message in DNA. We send radio signals into space, probe distant stars, build giant antennas in the hope that someone might answer. But maybe the answer has always been here, not in the sky, but within us. In 2013, two Kazakh scientists, Vladimir Sherbak and Maxim Makukov, put forward an idea that sends chills down your spine. They studied the structure of DNA and noticed strange repeating numerical patterns. Too precise, too orderly. One number appeared especially often, 37. This wasn't random, and it showed up in key places of the genetic code, as if someone left a signature right inside us. Their hypothesis, what if DNA is not just an instruction manual for building a human, but also a time capsule, a message, ultra-durable, passed down for millions of years. A message from those who were here before us, or from those who created us. It sounds crazy maybe, but we do the same thing ourselves. We send a golden record aboard the Voyager probes, put messages in bottles, dream of being found. Why couldn't someone else have done the same? And now imagine maybe we are that very bottle, only we haven't yet learned to read what's written on it. The road through the ashes, southern Italy. While laying a gas pipeline, an excavator hits something strange under a thin layer of volcanic ash. Bare human footprints, and next to them, hoof prints. Archaeologists rush to the site and realize they are looking at scenes of an ancient escape. People, women, children, livestock, everyone was leaving their homes in a hurry. But this isn't Pompeii, and it's not the year 79 AD. These footprints are 1,800 years older, around 1995 BC. This was the time of the so-called Avellino eruption, one of the most devastating catastrophes of the Bronze Age. Until recently, it was believed that almost nothing was known about it. Now we can literally see the path of the people who tried to escape. Their final choices are captured in the hardened ash. Amazingly, centuries later, people settled in the same place again. Archaeologists have found remains of settlements dating back to 1,200, 1,900 BC, and even Roman structures. The cycle repeats itself. First comes the eruption, then the return. It's as if the land itself won't let us forget. This isn't just a story of disaster, it's about repeating mistakes, about the stubbornness of human hope, about memory, which, like ash, still remains underfoot. A female leader and mythological creatures. Archaeologists have discovered a throne hall in Peru that dates back to the 7th century AD. Researchers found this ancient hall with columns and colorful frescoes in the coastal valley of Panamarca, about 400 kilometers from Lima. Scientists believe that the room was built by the Moche culture about 1,300 years ago, and that it belonged to a female leader. The walls depict a woman on a throne receiving visitors. Archaeologists suggest that this could be an image of a ruler. The entire space of the hall was decorated with mythological scenes, with no empty surfaces. Archaeologist Jose Ochitoma states that the scenes on the frescoes tell about the ideology of the Moche, and nearby, another room was discovered, the Hall of Intertwined Serpents. There, researchers saw frescoes depicting warriors and mythological creatures that had not previously been seen in Peruvian mythology. The mystical stones of Jalisco, Piedras Grabadas de Ojuelos de Jalisco, are mysterious stones found in the Mexican state of Jalisco, on which strange figures, scenes, and symbols are carved. These stones have attracted the attention of researchers and UFO enthusiasts thanks to the images that, according to some, indicate contact between ancient civilizations and extraterrestrial beings. The stones depict people interacting with figures, as well as objects that resemble modern representations of UFOs. Supporters of the ancient astronaut theory claim that these stones may be important evidence that the ancient cultures of Jalisco really did encounter extraterrestrial beings, or at least perceive such contacts within the framework of their myths and legends. Despite their controversial nature and lack of scientific confirmation, the stones continue to attract interest as a possible artifact reflecting the interaction between mythology and reality in ancient cultures. They attract the interest of antiquities enthusiasts, raising questions about how our ancestors might have perceived or interpreted unusual phenomena. Ghana's treasures. 2 leading British museums have reached an agreement with the government of Ghana to return gold artifacts stolen in the 19th century. In May of last year, Asante Hene, the King of Ghana, met in London with the directors of the British Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum. It was decided to transfer to Ghana for 3 years the exhibits taken by the British 150 years ago. In 1874, the British looted the royal palace in Ghana. In 1896, there was another military operation that led to further looting. In a joint statement, the museums acknowledge that the seized items have cultural and historical significance for the Asante people and are connected to British colonial history. Among the returned exhibits are a golden peace pipe, purchased at auction for £85 sterling, as well as rings, sheaths, discs, souls, knives, and necklaces. The English fear that this agreement could set a precedent for the return of other items seized during colonial wars. I am very glad that valuable museum exhibits are finally starting to gradually return to their homeland.
Мыши съели важное послание.
Archaeologists sometimes make such amazing discoveries that it's hard to believe. One of the most unusual finds was an ancient Greek letter that was eaten by mice. It was written on a wooden tablet and contained an order to kill the messenger. Researchers were never able to prove whether this order was carried out. The letter, written between 257 and 248 BC, belonged to a man named Ephermostos. He sent it to his brother Zenon. The letter said, "Greetings. The letter you wrote to Menon about Calicon's money was eaten by mice. You would do me a favor if you write back soon, so that Calicon is not delayed. Goodbye." The ancient Greeks often wrote letters on various topics: family stories, news, love messages, political views. Letters were an important means of communication and literary expression. The first mention of a letter in Greek literature appeared in Homer's Iliad, where the king gives a tablet to Bellerophon. In the 6th century, BC, Herodotus described correspondence between King Amasis and the tyrant Polycrates. Letters were written with a reed pen and ink on papyrus, which was then rolled up and tied with a thread. Official documents were sealed so that only the recipient could open them. In addition to papyrus, they used metal, wood, beeswax, clay tablets, limestone, or animal skin. The oldest Greek letters were written on lead tablets around 500 BC. Pyramid in Israel. In the Judean desert near the Dead Sea, archaeologists came across a mysterious pyramid-shaped structure about 2,200 years old. Built from massive hand-hewn stones, each weighing hundreds of kilograms, the pyramid still remains a mystery to researchers. The structure is located about 20 kilometers south of Masada and dates back to the Hellenistic period, when the territories of Israel were ruled by the Ptolemies and Seleucids. Already in the first week of excavations, bronze coins, weapons, papyri with Greek texts, pottery, and even ancient furniture were found here. All of this was miraculously preserved thanks to the dry desert climate. Scientists suggest that the structure might have been a watchtower protecting a trade route, along which salt and bitumen from the Dead Sea were transported. There is another theory as well. Perhaps tax collectors were stationed here, checking passing merchants. Later, during the Roman period, the structure might have been converted into a monumental tomb. Traces of burials point to this, although most of the tomb, unfortunately, was looted. Prototypes taken to the USA and the USSR. Night. In the silence of the archive vault, I leaf through old documents. The cover of the folder reads Operation Paperclip. Inside are lists of German surnames with notes in English: Werner von Braun, Hubertus Struthold, Arthur Rudolph, Nazi engineers and doctors who did not face trial after the war. Instead of prison, they were given new offices and laboratories on the other side of the ocean. Summer of 1945. The war has just ended. American military secretly take hundreds of specialists from the defeated Germany. This is how Operation Paperclip begins. The program that transferred about 1,600 German scientists and engineers to the United States. The Americans carefully erased any mention of their Nazi past. Here is von Braun, a former SS officer who became a key engineer at NASA. Dr. Struthold, who participated in horrific experiments on prisoners, is now called the father of space medicine in the United States. Engineer Rudolph, the creator of the V-2 rocket, who used the slave labor of concentration camp prisoners, now designs Saturn rockets for America. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Along with them, German aircraft designers, chemists, and dozens of other former Nazis also settled in the United States. The Americans took not only people but also captured technologies, tons of secret blueprints, rocket parts, and experimental samples of new technology. Any knowledge that gave an advantage in the new war turned out to be more important than morality. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union was conducting a similar hunt. In the fall of 1946, Operation Oso-Aviakim was carried out. In one night, more than 2,000 German engineers and their families were forcibly sent deep into the USSR. There, at closed facilities, former enemies worked side by side with Soviet designers. No one cares about past beliefs, only the skills gained while serving Hitler matter. A few years later, rockets created with the help of these German specialists would launch a Soviet satellite into orbit and send the first human into space. Many of the greatest breakthroughs of the Cold War, from ballistic missiles and jet aircraft to the flight of a human to the moon, grew out of this dark legacy of the Third Reich. The defeated Nazi genius was invisibly present in the achievements of the new superpowers. Nazi engineering did not disappear. It simply changed its flag. And along with it, part of the immoral ideology seeped through. The end justifies the means. Science serves power, even if there are crimes behind it. Officially, the world condemned Nazism at Nuremberg, but in reality, the victors eagerly took advantage of the fruits of its labor. This is the dark side of victory, which they preferred to keep silent about. Sometimes I wonder, did we really win? Or did we just take what they created and build it into our own world? If the technologies, methods, and even people of the Third Reich became part of our future, does that mean we truly rewrote it? Or did we just continue under a different flag? We've been under observation for a long time. If we're searching for signals, it's logical to assume that someone might be searching for us too. But what if they've already found us long ago? In 2020, a group of astronomers published a study that changed the very way the question was posed. Scientists from Cornell University studied Earth's neighborhood and identified 1,400 star systems, from which it would be possible to find and observe our planet as it passes across the disk of the sun. In other words, to see Earth the way we see exoplanets. Their main conclusion is simple. If there is intelligent life in one of these systems, they could know right now that we are here. Moreover, 508 of these star systems are positioned so that Earth would be visible against the background of the sun for more than 10 hours in a row. That's enough to detect an atmosphere with oxygen, methane, and possibly signs of life. They could have detected us thousands of years ago, observed us, waited, and maybe they've already sent a signal that's still on its way. The SETI project is a global network of radio telescopes tracking anomalies and signals from deep space. We've listened to thousands of systems, but so far, there's only silence. Modern scientists are cautious but not skeptical. No one laughs anymore at those who say, maybe we're not alone, because there are billions of planets suitable for life. Life beyond the arena. When we think of gladiators, a vivid image immediately comes to mind. Fights in the arena, where blood, death, and glory merge into one sinister spectacle. However, this is only a small part of what these fighters did. In reality, their lives were much more complicated and diverse. Besides training and fighting, gladiators served in a variety of roles, from bodyguards to mercenaries and even tax collectors. And of course, there were special privileges since free gladiators became real stars of Rome. Strength, bravery, and discipline, and many of them became heroes to the citizens, bringing them glory and immortalizing the traditions of the brutal arena. But there is another side to their lives. Many gladiators used their popularity to marry into influential families, were hired as bodyguards, and sometimes even rose to the level of political figures, managing tax collection. Their lives were not just a struggle for survival, but also a game of power and wealth. And so, with each passing year, it became more and more clear that a true gladiator could be not just a warrior, but someone who knows how to survive and succeed despite all the dangers. The results shocked the scientists. The story of the mummy, which had been kept at the University of Warsaw for many years and was shrouded in mystery, finally received a logical explanation. It was previously believed that this was a man, a priest named Korjakuti, who lived in the 1st century BC. However, in 2015, researchers performed a CT scan and discovered that it was actually a woman. Moreover, scientists thought that she was pregnant at the time of her death. The images supposedly show the bones of a fetus, a tiny hand, and a leg. This sparked huge interest in the scientific world, as this could have been the first pregnant mummy ever discovered. Moreover, researchers noticed deformations on the skull of the mysterious lady and suggested that aggressive cancer could have been the cause of death. However, over time, doubts began to arise. Radiologist Sahar Salim from Cairo immediately pointed out that there is no anatomical evidence of a fetus. She asked a logical question: why did the bones disappear while the baby's soft tissues stayed preserved? Recently, archaeologist Kamila Brolinska and her colleagues revisited the case and conducted a repeated analysis of more than 1,400 CT scans. 4 independent groups worked on it, and they all came to the same conclusion. There was no pregnancy. The so-called fetus turned out to be clumps of tissue left due to disruptions in the mummification process. The same goes for the supposed cancer. The skull was damaged during brain extraction, which is not uncommon in careless embalming. So the mysterious lady remains a mystery once again, but now without sensational headlines. This story shows how important it is to double-check even the most high-profile scientific discoveries. Magic and occultism. Honestly, for a long time, I thought all this talk about magic in the Third Reich was exaggerated. Just another myth to make evil seem more theatrical. But the deeper you dig into it, the more doubts remain. They really did believe. A state in which occultism was built into the very system. Himmler considered himself a direct heir of ancient magicians. He personally oversaw the creation of the Black Order, the inner elite of the SS, where runes, rituals, astrology, and even sacrifices were not a game, but a part of the ideology. Ceremonies were held at Wewelsburg Castle. The Nazis reconstructed the mythology of the ancient Germans, combining it with Tibetan and Indian symbols. They needed to create an alternative spirituality, one that justifies destruction, one that knows no mercy. I was especially struck by how they worked with symbols. It wasn't just the swastika. These are runes, sun symbols, blood as a magical substance, a ritual sword. They weren't just killing. They believed they were killing in the name of something. Some documents found after the war directly indicate an interest in telepathy, prophecies, and the search for sacred artifacts. They say that in Berlin's final war months, people weren't seeking victory, but rather a way to disappear, cross over, and escape to where they believed everything was just starting. But that was considered normal at the time.
НЛО Третьего рейха.
If all this talk about ancient UFOs seems too mythical, then this story is much closer to our time and is much more frightening, because we're going to talk about technologies that were allegedly developed in Nazi Germany in the last years of the war, and about a secret that neither the Allies nor history could take away. The Nazis really did create incredible things, from the first ballistic missiles to jet aircraft. The latest theory holds that flying machines of unimaginable shape and power were developed in hidden bunkers of the Reich. They are called Honebu, Vril, and the most mysterious of them all, Die Glocke, the bell. The bell is not just a piece of technology. It is a legend surrounded by rumors, disappearances, and strange deaths. According to rumors, the object was a metallic machine about 4 meters tall, shaped like a bell, which could distort space and time, an anti-gravity engine based on some kind of dark energy, which caused the project's staff to die. Some claim that Die Glocke disappeared along with the SS elites who went to Antarctica, to a mysterious area called New Swabia. There, in the inaccessible icy depths, a base was allegedly built from which a new era began. According to other versions, the bell was found by the Americans and transported to the United States. That's why there were strange leaps in technology after 1945. You start looking at memoirs, classified documents, and strange activity in the Antarctic region in the late 1940s. Some even link this to Operation High Jump, the largest polar military expedition in the U.S., whose official goal was research, but according to unofficial sources, it was to intercept surviving Nazis with UFO technology. Historians, of course, deny all this, but the question remains, where did dozens of scientists, engineers, and prototypes disappear to? Why is there so little information about this, even after almost 80 years? The first mammoth that might come back. The permafrost of Yakutia preserved the mammoth's body as if it had been taken out of a freezer. Yucca is not just a mummified corpse. It has preserved its brain, soft tissues, glands, and most importantly, living cell nuclei. Scientists have already conducted the first experiments. They implanted the nuclei into a mouse cell, and it showed signs of activity. No division yet, but this is just the beginning. Cloning is being seriously discussed, and if the technology succeeds, the mammoth could become the first species to return from extinction. It sounds like science fiction, but it's no longer fiction. This is a functioning laboratory. A giant Viking burial archaeologist made a unique discovery in the village of Osum, east of Odense, Denmark. They discovered more than 50 well-preserved Viking skeletons, which is rare for such burial sites. In addition to the skeletons, 5 cremation burials were found, adding value to the discovery. According to archaeologist Michael Bohr-Lunde, such discoveries open up new opportunities to study the health, diet, and origins of people from that time. It may be possible to find out if they were related. The burial site, covering about 2,000 square meters, dates back to the 9th and 10th centuries, before the reign of Gorm and Tyra. This is one of the largest Viking burial sites found on the island of Funen. Some of the graves indicate a high status of the buried individuals. For example, the burial of a noblewoman who was buried in a wagon with items such as a necklace of glass beads, a key, and a knife with silver trim. At her feet was a wooden chest, the contents of which remain a mystery. A bronze brooch and a piece of rock crystal, probably brought from Norway, were also found in the burials. These findings confirm that the Vikings had extensive trade connections. Mystical petroglyphs. The distance from Egypt to Australia is 12,500 kilometers. However, as archaeological discoveries show, for ancient people, this distance was easily overcome. The Gosford glyphs are mysterious petroglyphs discovered in a rocky area near the city of Gosford in Australia. These images on the stone amazed researchers with their resemblance to ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. The glyphs depict scenes and symbols that suggest these images may indicate possible contact between ancient Australian tribes and extraterrestrial beings, or even ancient Egyptian journeys to Australia. Proponents of the ancient astronaut theory claim that these glyphs could be evidence that, in the distant past, there were interactions between different ancient cultures or even with extraterrestrial civilizations. However, skeptics also weigh in here, pointing out numerous inconsistencies and believing that the glyphs could have been created in modern times, possibly as a hoax, or are the work of local Aboriginal people who use symbols similar to Egyptian ones. The question of the origin and authenticity of the Gosford glyphs remains open. At the moment, there is no convincing evidence confirming their antiquity or connection to extraterrestrial civilizations, which makes this discovery one of the most mysterious archaeological enigmas in Australia. Portal to the Underworld. Last year, a unique artifact called the Portal to the Underworld was returned to Mexico. It had been stolen and taken to the United States in the 1960s. Recently, scientists completed its restoration and returned it to its original location in central Mexico. This monument, created by the Olmec civilization, was long considered a gateway to the other world. In the 1960s, it was stolen from Chalcatzingo, a famous Olmec archaeological site, where it depicted a mythical cat with gaping jaws, symbolizing the entrance to the spiritual world. The monument dates back to the pre-classic period, created between 800 and 400 BC. The thieves broke the artifact with hammers to make it easier to transport, but they did not damage its main features. It was smuggled into the United States, where it ended up on the illegal antiquities market. In 1968, the artifact ended up in the New York Museum under the name Earth Monster. Archaeologist David Grove recognized the Olmec origin of the monument and noted its similarity to other sculptures in Chalcatzingo, especially the eyes shaped like the Olmec cross and the bromeliad flowers near the mouth. A rare coin in Jerusalem. Israeli archaeologists, during excavations near Jerusalem, discovered a unique artifact, a fragment of an ancient silver coin estimated to be 2,550 years old. This find is one of only 6 coins of this type ever discovered in Israel. The coins belong to a group of very early coins that were minted in the 6th to 5th centuries BC outside of Israel, in ancient Greece, Cyprus, and Turkey. This artifact was created in an era when coins had just begun to be used. And its discovery provides important information about the transition from weighing silver to using coins as a means of payment. The discovered coin was deliberately cut into two parts, which indicates that it was used as a weighed piece of silver in the 4th century BC, even though coins were already in circulation at that time. On one side of the coin, a pattern made by a square stamp can be seen. This indicates that coins with raised images appeared later, thanks to the development of more advanced minting technologies. Is the 700-year-old alchemist still alive? The name Nicolas Flamel has long been surrounded by an aura of mystery and legend. He was born in the 1330s in Pontoise, near Paris. Having lost his parents early, thanks to a good education, he found work as a scribe in the capital and quickly prospered. His offices with copyists brought in a steady income, and his clients were among the wealthy townspeople. The real mystery began in 1357, when Flamel acquired an ancient manuscript from a wandering merchant, the Book of the Sage Abraham, written in Aramaic. To decipher it, he went to Spain, where, according to legend, he learned the secret of the philosopher's stone, a substance that turns metals into gold and grants immortality. In 1368, Flamel married a wealthy widow, Pernelle, which made him even richer. Together, the couple actively donated to churches, hospitals, and those in need. After Pernelle's death in 1402, Nicholas's generosity only increased. He remained remarkably vigorous even in his old age, which led to rumors that Flamel had truly created the elixir of eternal life. Flamel died in 1418, but rumors about him faking his death did not subside. He was allegedly seen in India and the Ottoman Empire, and later in Paris in the catacombs. It was said that he and Pernelle were alive, hiding and continuing to practice alchemy. Skeptics claim that the story is a 17th century invention and that the Book of Hieroglyphic Figures was the work of London publishers. But interest in Flamel only grew. In the 19th century, a certain man pretended to be him, offering the secret of immortality for 300,000 francs, and his tombstone was found in a Paris shop where it was being used as a cutting board. Today, the tombstone is kept in the Cluny Museum, and Flamel's house on Rue Montmorency is the oldest residential building in Paris. After Harry Potter, interest in Flamel flared up with renewed vigor. What if he's actually alive, just not eager to make himself known?
5 скелетов, которых не должно быть.
In the spring of 2024, archaeologists in Poland made a strange discovery. Under the rubble of one of the buildings in the Wolf's Lair complex, the former residence of the Nazi leadership, human remains were found. 5 skeletons, 3 adults, a teenager, and an infant. All of them were missing their feet and hands. No identification, no clothing, no explanations. This part of the complex belonged to Hermann Goering, and it was here that he held private meetings. There were no random people here, and there certainly couldn't have been any burials. The area was heavily guarded. Only a few had access to these rooms. Who these people are is still unknown. No dental prostheses, no documents, no military tags were found. Only skeletons. The bodies were arranged as if someone had deliberately staged the scene. The execution theory? But then who is the infant? The ritual theory. Archaeologists do not rule it out. In the Reich's final days, something irrational, almost religious, occurred. Hitler himself was convinced of the sacred role of this war. He believed that the struggle of the Third Reich was not just politics, but the revival of an ancient order. Why did these bodies end up in the center of the lair? And why weren't they taken away or buried, but simply dumped under the floor? Why, during their retreat, did the Nazis focus on destroying the bunkers and blowing everything up instead of trying to save themselves? As if they were afraid not of the advancing Soviet army, but of future archaeologists. Maybe it wasn't about these bodies at all, but about what was hidden nearby. Something that wasn't supposed to be left behind after they were gone. Something they buried and kept secret. UFOs are not just a 20th century thing. When we hear the word UFO, the 20th century immediately comes to mind. Roswell, movies, tinfoil hats. But the truth is, people saw unidentified objects long before the era of television and aviation. We have documented cases dating back to ancient Rome. Chronicles recorded fiery shields, flying ships, strange beings descending from the sky, and even abductions in the clouds. All of this was recorded not by science fiction writers, but by historians, monks, and officials. In the 4th century AD, the Roman chronicler Iuli Obsequent described dozens of such cases in his book Liber Prodigiorum. Over Rome, people allegedly saw blazing spheres, glowing ships, and beings that descended from the sky. At least that's how the eyewitnesses perceived it. Pliny the Elder also mentions a mysterious burning shield that hovered over the city during the Second Punic War. And this is not the only case. Similar descriptions are found in the chronicles of Ireland, China, and India. Was this a coincidence in symbolism? A mass hallucination? Or did we really observe the same phenomenon, just calling it different things in different eras? Once they were gods, then angels. Today, aliens. But the essence, perhaps, is the same. When the Sahara was an ocean, now it seems lifeless. Endless sand, sun-scorched rocks, rare caravans. But millions of years ago, the Sahara was completely different. It was an ocean. The Tethys Ocean was vast, warm, and inhabited by ancient creatures. Ammonites, sea urchins, corals, giant reptiles. All of this lived where today only lizards barely survive. Geologists have found traces of deltas, riverbeds, and shorelines. Everything points to the fact that water once splashed here. But the ocean disappeared, and a new story began in its place. Hundreds of thousands of years later, people settled on this land. Some of the most ancient people whose name still echoes through the sands are the Berbers, or, as they call themselves, the Amazi. They descend from those who survived climate changes, vanished rivers, and dried lakes. They remained when others left. Their rock paintings into Sili Najar are a true library of prehistoric consciousness. People hunting with bows, festivals, scenes of love and war. There are even images of beings with rounded helmets, as if from another reality. Some believe it's an allegory. Others see it as proof of contact with another intelligence. But the essence is the same. Before the Sahara came alive, the Berbers already shared stories and knew how to find water and survive scorching days and freezing nights. They ruled Numidia, traded with Rome, and fought with Egypt. And then they disappeared from the map, but not from the land. The Arab conquest pushed them from cities into deserts and mountains, but their culture endured. Today, Berber is still spoken in remote villages, preserving a memory thousands of years old. And in the desert itself, there are traces of a much more ancient past: stone mushrooms. At first glance, they are just rocks, but if you look closely, their shape is astonishing. A massive cap of hard stone rests on a thin, eroded stem. These formations are the result of differential erosion. The wind, carrying sand, polishes the soft rocks for years, leaving the hard ones standing. Each such mushroom is like a marker of time, temporary but proud. Their stems gradually become thinner, and one day the cap will collapse. They live for hundreds of thousands of years, but are still doomed, just like the ocean. Just like civilization, only memory in stones, pollen, and sand outlasts everything. Are there any other traces left of this ancient civilization? And what can they tell us about a past that we still do not understand? The Sword of Islam. This sword, known as the Sword of Islam, was created as a symbolic ceremonial weapon and was presented to Benito Mussolini in 1937 in Tripoli. The goal was to demonstrate the support of his regime by the Muslims of Libya, which was then under Italian control. Mussolini readily accepted this gift and even used it in propaganda, presenting himself as a defender of Islam in an attempt to strengthen Italy's influence in North Africa and the Middle East. The sword was distinguished by its luxurious design. Inlays, intricate engraving, and oriental motifs emphasized its status not as a weapon, but as a political symbol. However, the fate of this sword turned out to be dramatic. In July 1943, when Mussolini's residence in the Rocca delle Caminate was destroyed and looted by fighters of the Italian resistance movement, the sword disappeared without a trace. It is still unknown whether it was destroyed, hidden, or taken away. The Sword of Islam remains in history as a rare example of how a weapon can be used not for war, but as a tool of ideology, and as an artifact that disappeared along with the fall of the regime that tried to use it to strengthen its hold on power. Raimondo di Sangro's Anatomical Machines. In Naples, in the basement of the San Severo Chapel, there are two exhibits that still excite the imagination of visitors and scholars. These are the so-called anatomical machines, two skeletons, one male and one female. Around them, The circulatory system is meticulously reproduced. Arteries, veins, and capillaries entwine the bones running through the head, chest, and limbs. For centuries, there have been legends that the vessels are real and the skeletons are the remains of people sacrificed for science. Supposedly, the anatomist Giuseppe Salerno, under the orders of Prince Raimondo di Sangro, injected a special substance into his servants while they were still alive, which caused their blood to petrify and preserved the vessels in perfect condition. In reality, things were a bit more prosaic. The vessels are made of wax, wire, and silk, but with such precision that even modern experts do not rule out the possibility that experiments were conducted on living people before the models were created. Prince Raimondo was an extraordinary person, an alchemist, inventor, and experimenter. He created fireworks that resembled architectural landscapes, forged jewelry, and supposedly invented an eternal flame that burned for 3 months. Once, next to the female skeleton, there was a third skeleton, a fetus connected by the placenta. But in the 1990s, it was stolen. Nevertheless, the anatomical machines still amaze and frighten people, and that apparently was their purpose. Reichsgold, one of the sunken ships in Austria's Toplitzsee Lake, hid its secret for decades. Depth, murky water, dangerous currents, an ideal hiding place. Rumors had long circulated about gold, documents, and stolen art at the bottom. Recently, there was new reason to take these rumors seriously. Researchers discovered a sealed safe, according to various estimates, up to 4 tons of gold. At first, I thought it was just another legend. Photos, footage, and documents, some from CIA archives, later surfaced. Their data confirmed the ship carried special cargo that absolutely could not fall into Allied hands. This isn't just wealth, it's a backup plan, a resource for escape, for recovery, for continuing in the shadows. We're talking about the legacy of the Reich in technology, in ideas, in people. But every legacy also has a material part, heavy, valuable, dangerous. And the fact that it was hidden in lakes, in mines, in glaciers, speaks to the scale. These weren't just random hidden chests, this was a system. Charles Fort and the hunt for anomalies. When you look at the sky and see something unexplainable, you're not alone. 100 years ago, there was a man who dedicated his life to exactly such moments. His name was Charles Fort. He wasn't looking for proof, he was collecting oddities. Everything that didn't fit into science. Rains of fish, flashes of light in the sky, disappearances of people, reports of mysterious objects. He didn't explain, he just recorded because he knew. Sometimes the facts themselves are scarier than any theory. Ford was someone who didn't believe in either science or religion because both ignored the inconvenient. And that's where the most interesting things are. He used to say, between facts and fantasy, there's a zone where anything is possible, and that zone is real. We just don't know how to look there. People read his books in secret, like something forbidden. His ideas inspired dozens of movies and TV shows. From The Twilight Zone to The X-Files, he was the first to show that anomalies are not nonsense, but a misunderstood part of reality. You don't have to believe, what matters is keeping your eyes open. Now millions continue his work. Every time someone writes on the internet, I saw a glowing object. It hovered in the sky and disappeared. That's exactly what Fordianism is. A culture where the strange is a reason to investigate, not to reject. But there is another side. We are doubting everything more and more, and we're less and less sure what to believe. And this is no longer just a hunt for anomalies, it's already a symptom. Bronze artifacts in Turkey. In the ruins of the ancient Ayanis castle located in modern-day Turkey, archaeologists discovered bronze shields and a helmet that are about 2,700 years old. These artifacts, found under a 20-meter layer of debris, were created during the time of the Urartian kingdom and were probably used for ceremonial purposes to honor the god Kaldi, the protector, in war. The Ayanis castle was built as a fortress and royal residence during the reign of King Rusa, the second in the 7th century BC. However, it stood for only 20 to 25 years before it was destroyed by an earthquake. Recently discovered bronze shields and a helmet were found in the ceremonial hall of the castle. The helmet decorations and shield patterns confirm their use in religious rituals. Previously, other bronze items were found at this site, many of which are dedicated to Kaldi, the main god of the Urartians, who was believed to protect them during battles. Despite minor damage, the artifacts are well preserved, and restoration will help fully recover them. Ayaniz Castle continues to be the richest source of Urartian-era bronze artifacts in Turkey, and each discovery provides more information about the culture of this ancient kingdom, with unique frescoes. Amazing frescoes depicting everyday life in the 8th century were found in a Tang Dynasty tomb in northern China. The frescoes, dated to the year 736, cover all the walls of the tomb except the floor, and depict scenes from the life of the Tang Dynasty. The tomb belonged to a man who died at the age of 63. The paintings are done in the Tang Dynasty style, using strong outlines and simple shading, and mostly appear two-dimensional. This style, known as figures under the tree, was popular in Taiyuan, the capital of Shanxi province. The gates, corridor, and pedestal of the tomb are also decorated with frescoes. On the outside of the gates, guards are depicted. The frescoes do not portray well-known historical periods or important figures. In one scene, people are doing everyday tasks, such as grinding grain or drawing water from a well. In another, a woman with horses and a man with a whip are depicted, presumably from the non-Han ethnic group. The figures in the frescoes resemble the same man and woman, which leads archaeologists to believe that they were the owners of the tomb. The tomb of Alexander the Great's relatives is in Virginia, a small Greek town with a population of about 1,500 people. It became famous thanks to archaeological discoveries. In 1977, royal tombs connected to the relatives of Alexander the Great were discovered here. For a long time, it was believed that one of the tombs belonged to Philip II of Macedon, the father of the famous conqueror. But the exact identification remained a mystery. The first studies of Virginia began in 1861 by the French researcher Léon Hoaxes, but the key discoveries were made by Manolis Andronikos in 1977 when the royal tombs were found. Based on recent research, scientists claimed that one of the tombs contains the burial of Philip II of Macedon, along with his wife Cleopatra and their newborn child. The knee injury on the skeleton matches historical records of Philip II's death. In the second tomb, according to researchers, are the remains of Eurydice and her husband Philip III Aridaeus, the half-brother of Alexander the Great. These conclusions are based on the absence of a leg injury and signs of frequent horseback riding on the female skeleton. The third tomb, as expected, belongs to Alexander IV, the son of Alexander the Great and Roxana. This is confirmed by long-standing scientific knowledge and the lack of grounds for new assumptions. These discoveries in Virginia enrich our knowledge of the history of Macedonia and its famous rulers, revealing new details about the lives and deaths of these historical figures. The legendary Florentine diamond, also known as the Austrian yellow, is that sparkling stone. It weighed 137.45 carats, and it impressed not only with its size but also with its unusual yellowish hue. According to legend, the diamond first belonged to the influential Medici family, and then ended up in the hands of the Habsburg dynasty, where it became part of the imperial regalia. For a long time, the Florentine was kept in the royal treasury in Vienna and was considered one of the most valuable stones in Europe. However, after the collapse of Austria-Hungary in 1928, its traces were lost. The stone was allegedly taken to South America, and according to rumors, was later split into several smaller diamonds to make it easier to sell and to hide its origin. To this day, it is unknown where the parts of the Florentine are, if it was indeed divided. Its history is shrouded in secrets and mysteries, and the diamond itself has become a symbol of the lost splendor of European dynasties. Perhaps it still lies today in some private safe waiting for its reappearance. Technology. When people recall the technological developments of the Third Reich, they most often talk about the V-1 and V-2 rockets. And indeed, these were the first ballistic missiles in history that struck cities and possibly set the direction for the entire future space program. But that's only what became public, what the world saw. At the same time, in closed facilities, work was underway on projects that are still the subject of debate. One of the most discussed projects is Honebu. These were developments of disc-shaped flying vehicles in the form of a flying saucer. The machine with a gravity engine was said to take off vertically and reach speeds beyond the aviation of that era. Schematics, labels, internal drawings, all of this exists. Perhaps these were only concepts, or maybe more. One of the key figures in this topic is Victor Schauberger, an Austrian engineer who worked with vortex flows. His idea was that energy could be obtained not by burning fuel, but by controlling the natural flows of water and air. The vortex, as he believed, was nature's invention of the perfect form of movement, and humans just needed to learn how to copy it. The Nazis knew this, and apparently used it. The peculiarity of all these projects is that they didn't look like frontline weapons. They weren't created to turn the tide of the war. They were made as if for another purpose, not for victory, but for some kind of transition. It's hard to explain this feeling, but it's there, as if someone expected that these machines would be needed not in 1945, but later. Of course, most of these developments never reach the testing stage, but their existence speaks to the scale of ambition, to the desire to break out beyond the limits, not figuratively, but literally. In these drawings, diagrams, and ideas, there was a drive to find a way out when all other roads had already been blocked. Military abductions and secret bases, thousands of stories, hundreds of memoirs, and they all say the same thing. Contact has already happened, but not for the whole world to see, not live on air. It happened in the shadows, under a top secret classification. One of the most discussed cases is the story of Charles James Hall, a U.S. Air Force veteran who served at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. He claims he worked side by side with aliens, whites, grays, even Nordics, tall humanoids who looked like humans. According to him, the whites could live up to 700 years, and the contact was officially an exchange of technology. According to another version, the U.S. authorities allowed the aliens to temporarily base themselves on Earth, supposedly for the sake of technology exchange, a Cold War-style deal. You give us something, we give you something. But what exactly did humans give away? Genetic material? Permission for abductions? Yes, abductions. In the 1960s, a whole wave of stories about nighttime visits, examinations, implants, and mysterious dreams broke out in the US and Europe, after which scars and fragments of memories remained. Many of those abducted were not fanatics or ufologists. They were doctors, military personnel, engineers, people who suddenly came to know too much. Today, these stories are mocked or ignored. But one fact remains: the number of testimonies is too great to simply write them off as imagination. The gates through which death passed. On the southwestern coast of Sicily, archaeologists uncovered not just ruins, but an entirely forgotten fragment of an ancient city. 3-meter-high walls, gates, cemeteries, workshops, all of this belonged to the ancient Greek city of Selinunte. Recently, the northern gates were discovered, through which processions passed to the necropolises. They led to 5,000 burials, from simple graves to rich crypts, and all of this stood on the most vulnerable border of the city. Apparently, ritual and vulnerability were connected. According to Diodorus Siculus, it was from here that the Carthaginian troops broke into the city. The battle lasted 10 days, and 16,000 defenders of Selinunte were killed. The battlefield is right here, under our feet, and nearby is the cemetery where they were possibly buried. It's amazing how much has been preserved: ovens, fragments of pottery, remains of craft workshops, and wine storage facilities. By the scale and density of the finds, it becomes clear that the city lived, traded, ritualized death, and suffered. And now, 2,500 years later, it is slowly coming back to the surface. The youngest archaeologist. During an ordinary family walk in Tel Azik, Israel, 3-year-old Ziv Nitza accidentally made an archaeological discovery. She found an ancient scarab about 3,800 years old. This place is known as the site of the biblical battle between David and Goliath. The discovery quickly drew the attention of the Israel Antiquities Authority, which confirmed the artifact's authenticity and uniqueness. It turned out that this was not just a stone, but an ancient seal in the shape of a scarab, a symbol of renewal and rebirth in Egyptian culture, which the Canaanites used as an amulet or seal. According to researchers, the scarab is connected to the Canaanite civilization, a people who inhabited the lands of the Levant during the Bronze Age. Such items reflected the beliefs, status, and close cultural ties of Canaan with Egypt. A history that isn't found in textbooks. Not so long ago, archaeologists found evidence that in ancient Troy, people were already drinking wine long before the Iliad was written. This is not just a theory or a guess, but actual chemical evidence that confirmed that even ordinary people in the territory of Troy not only drank wine, but also used it in their everyday lives. For researchers, this was a sensation because in ancient times, usually only the elite could afford the luxury of drinking wine. But in Troy, it was available to all social classes. Studies have shown that the cult of wine was so important to the inhabitants of Troy that the vessels in which it was drunk were found throughout the city, from wealthy palaces to simple residential quarters. But what's even more interesting is that the fermentation method used in Troy was so unique that it resembled those of more complex and advanced civilizations of that time. And now, thanks to these studies, we can confidently say that Troy was not just a legend. It was real, and its culture was much more complex and progressive than we could have imagined. The forest swastika, sometimes an idea, can literally take root in the ground, in a forest among trees that have been growing for decades. In the 1990s, strange pine plantings were discovered in Germany for the first time. So in the fall, when the leaves on the neighboring trees fell, the crowns remained green and formed a swastika. Such plantings were found in at least 4 places. The most famous one is near Uckermark in the north of the country. The trees were planted in the 1930s, 140 spruces, in the shape of a perfect Nazi emblem. It's only visible from the air. From the ground, it's just a forest. From a helicopter, it's a symbol of power across time. What struck me was the method, not the idea. This isn't graffiti or a wall drawing. This is an engineering project, a long-term one, to plant a forest so that in 60 years, someone looking down from above would understand whose territory this is. After the reunification of Germany, such areas began to be cut down. They were afraid that supporters would start going there, that it would become a place of power for those who believe that it's still not over. And, there's a certain irony in that. Everything they wanted to erase is growing back, even literally. The Nazis created symbols not for their contemporaries, but for future generations, so that their cult would continue to live on, even if nothing remained. No flag, no borders, only the forest. How did UFOs become a new religion? We live in a world where aliens are no longer science fiction, but almost commonplace. Memes, movies, YouTube, Telegram channels, merch. Aliens are not just a topic. It's a cultural phenomenon that has long gone beyond ufology. But how did this happen? It all started back in the 20th century. It started with books, rumors, and strange reports, where miraculously surviving footage supposedly showed alien corpses, and classified sources surfaced with confessions about experiments at Area 51. Then there were talk shows, investigations, documentaries, scandals, and all of this stopped being marginal. It became mainstream. For example, the fake footage of the Roswell alien autopsy, a complete hoax made in the 90s, drew millions of viewers. It was debunked. So what? That only strengthened the fans' beliefs. That means the truth is out there if they're working so hard to hide it. Charles Ford, the father of this whole movement, said back at the beginning of the century, "Science rejects too much, and the official explanation isn't always the truth." His ideas inspired a whole generation of anomaly hunters. He said, "If strange things are happening, it means we have the wrong picture of the world." Today, science, politics, and religion all cause skepticism. But for some reason, people trust aliens, even more than they trust governments. Reality seems to have changed. UFOs are a new mythology, a new religion. Only instead of angels, there are grays. Instead of prophets, there are contactees. Instead of sacred books, there are leaks from forums, TikTok, and leaked reports. And you know what's the scariest part? This belief is already controlling society. In 2023, the U.S. Congress seriously discussed the topic of UFOs. Hearings, reports, generals on the podium. And no one was laughing because the meme became reality. In this world, where everything can be fake, aliens have become a symbol of truth, of the search for it. Paradoxical, but true. A stash of golden treasures. In the French department of Dordogne, in the commune of Saint-André-d'Allah, workers unexpectedly stumbled upon a real treasure. Under the old stone wall, gold jewelry, valuables set with diamonds and pearls were hidden. The discovery was made by members of the Périgord Pirchèche organization, which is engaged in restoring traditional structures built using the dry stone method. The project leader, Jean-Marc Audit, said that during the excavation of the foundation, he noticed an unusual sparkle. That's how they discovered the jewelry, tangled in the roots of an old tree. Among them are rings, brooches, hairpins, bracelets, all inlaid with stones. All this indicates that the treasure lay under the wall for decades, if not centuries. How, when, and why the jewelry ended up in this place still remains a mystery. City Hall and the Prefecture of the Gendarmerie are investigating and asking residents to report any information about the jewelry's history. By law, a treasure found on municipal land is split equally between the finder and the landowner. Argentina. When I first read about Odessa, it seemed to me like it was just a plot for a movie, an organization created specifically to smuggle Nazis out of Europe. But then I saw documents, maps, interviews, photographs that don't explain themselves but say more than official reports. After the war, dozens, hundreds of SS men disappeared. They didn't just hide, they vanished. And almost all the trails led to one place, South America, especially Argentina, a country where dictators openly sympathized with Hitler. And in the mountains, those who didn't want to be found were hiding. In 2017, a cache was found in the Argentine Andes. Weapons from the Third Reich era, medals, maps with German inscriptions. Everything was carefully hidden. They were hidden not like museum pieces, but like things someone might need. Later, CIA archives surfaced. There are recorded conversations mentioning German bases, a hidden settlement, and even Hitler. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but when too many random discoveries form a chain, it's no longer a coincidence. It's a route. Some left, while others kept working, not at the front, but in the shadows. The real fear isn't that they survived, but that they may have lived for a long time, and to pass on not orders, but ideas. What kind of aliens did the ancients see? When people say aliens, they usually imagine gray humanoids with big eyes. But in ancient texts, frescoes, and myths, the images are completely different. These are fiery chariots, bird people, shining gods who came from the sky. They are not always strangers. Sometimes they are our creators, sometimes mentors. Sometimes they're punitive forces, erasing civilizations entirely. The Sumerians had the Anunnaki. The Dogon had the Nomo from the planet Sirius. The Hindus had gods who flew on Vimanas. The Mayan Indians had Quetzalcoatl, the feathered god who came from the east and promised to return. All of them are described as higher beings who came from out there and then left somewhere. Coincidence? Or did every ancient civilization have contact, but with different manifestations of the same intelligence? Maybe it's not just aliens in a flying saucer, but something much more complex. A consciousness that appears in a way that the observer is ready to perceive. Icy ruins beneath the snow. We're used to thinking of the Arctic as a place ruled only by icy emptiness, lifeless, barren, devoid of any traces of civilization. But what if that's not the case? What if, beneath the thick glaciers, there are not just traces of long-lost peoples, but entire lost cities? Satellite research in recent years has led to the discovery of anomalous shapes beneath the icy crust, which may indicate ancient ruins hidden deep within the northern depths. According to some scientists, these cities may be much older than the very first civilizations known to us. Mesopotamia, Egypt, ancient India, all these peoples could have simply been a continuation of something greater and more mysterious than we can imagine. How is this possible? How could it happen that such cities are hidden under a layer of ice several kilometers thick? Today, these anomalies remain at the level of hypotheses, but each new study only deepens the mystery. Satellite images taken in the most remote corners of the planet show strange shapes and lines that resemble the structure of buildings, streets, or even entire cities. Are these glaciers not just barriers, but burial grounds of ancient civilizations? Ice caps that conceal not only climate changes, but also forgotten epics of humanity. Amazingly, it's possible that these cities fell victim to global catastrophes that preceded the ice ages. After all, is there anything older than what is preserved in the eternal ice? This question concerns scientists more than ever, and perhaps if we unravel the mystery hidden beneath centuries-old ice, we will reconsider not only the history of our civilizations, but also our very understanding of how our world developed. Arabian jewels in Russia. In Veliki Novgorod, a record-sized hoard was discovered. consisting of Arabian silver jewelry and coins dating back to the late 10th century. The find was made on Vozvijenskaya Street during excavations at a construction site. This hoard, named the Vozvijensky Hoard, became the third such discovery in the city. In the church, 1,800 whole and fragmented silver coins were found, as well as more than 80 silver ornaments with a total weight of about 3 kilograms. Among the ornaments, some of the oldest silver crosses in Rus were discovered, which were previously little known. According to scientists, this is one of the largest archaeological discoveries in the history of Veliki Novgorod. Namali figurines. One of the most mysterious artifacts of the African continent is the Namali figurines found in Sierra Leone in West Africa. These ancient sculptures carved from stone depict strange creatures with disproportionately large heads, bulging eyes, and other unusual features that are not characteristic of human anatomy. Some of them even depict scenes that can be interpreted as mythological or religious. The unique shapes and features of these figurines have attracted the attention not only of archaeologists, but also of proponents of ancient astronaut theories. Some researchers believe that the Namali figurines may represent images of extraterrestrial beings with whom the ancient inhabitants of the region may have had contact. In their opinion, the strange proportions and features of the figurines may indicate that they were created under the impression of real beings of extraterrestrial origin. Although this theory has no scientific evidence, it adds an aura of mystery to the Namali figurines and attracts the attention of ufologists and lovers of mysticism. Mainstream science regards the Namali figurines as religious or ritual objects, and it believes that these artifacts were most likely used in ancient ceremonies or rituals related to the worship of gods or spirits, as they could have symbolized certain mythological characters. As I told you before, when archaeologists or historians can't explain the origin of an artifact, it inevitably becomes an object of religious significance. Interestingly, Namali figurines are often found deep in the ground, sometimes together with other ancient artifacts, various iron objects or weapons, which makes it more difficult to date them and determine their cultural context. Some findings suggest that these artifacts may have existed in very ancient times, possibly long before the emergence of known civilizations in this region. Echoes of the Ancient Bible. In Andalusia, archaeologists have discovered a unique artifact connected to Julius Caesar and the ancient Iberian Roman city of Ipsca. The find is a lead sling bullet on which Caesar's name and the name of Ipsca are inscribed in abbreviated form. This is the first case on the Iberian Peninsula where such a clear inscription of Caesar's name and the name of a Roman city from Spain has been found on such a projectile. The discovery was made thanks to the work of experts from various research institutions in Spain. The ball was found in Mantilla, in Andalusia, where historians believe the famous Battle of Munda may have taken place in 45 BC, where Caesar faced the sons of Pompey. The ball itself is shaped like an acorn with pointed ends, measuring 4.5 centimeters in length, 2 centimeters in width, and 1.7 centimeters in height. It weighs about 71 grams. The inscriptions Ipsca and case are clearly engraved on it. This artifact is an example of the ancient Greek and Roman practice of inscribing metal projectiles for slings known as glandes inscriptae. Clay molds with engravings were used to create these projectiles, which made it possible to produce embossed inscriptions. These inscriptions usually contain the name of the manufacturer, military leaders, legions, or locations of deployment. The Tiara of Saitaphernes. For many years, the Louvre proudly displayed a golden tiara that supposedly belonged to the Scythian king Saitaphernes. The inscription showed the artifact was given to the king by the people of ancient Greek Olbia, and it appeared authentic. However, behind its shiny appearance was one of the most notorious hoaxes in the history of archaeology. The story began in 1894 in Odessa, when two antique dealers, the Gokman brothers, convinced a talented jeweler, Israel Rukamovsky, to make a diadem in the ancient Greek style for their archaeologist friend. Rukamovsky, unfamiliar with ancient mythology, depended on illustrations from the books he received. The resulting masterpiece, weighing half a kilogram, looked like a genuine artifact. Scenes from the Iliad, carefully engraved figures, and a solemn inscription praising the king. The Gauquemins sold the item to the Louvre at a profit, where it was purchased for 200,000 francs. The deal was made, as people later joked, on April 1, 1896. However, soon, some archaeologists, particularly Adolf Furtwängler, began to doubt the authenticity of the artifact. The Louvre, however, disagreed, claiming the criticism stemmed from envy in politics. The truth, however, was only revealed in 1903 when Rukamovsky learned that his creation had become a museum relic. He came to Paris, personally reproduced a fragment of the diadem, and proved that it was a modern forgery. The Louvre had no choice but to admit its mistake. The tiara joined the forgery collection, making Rukamovsky famous. His works became sought after, and the tiara incident became a key lesson for museums worldwide. Space. The more I delved into the late Nazi projects, the more often I had the feeling that at some point they stopped operating within the bounds of this reality, as if they no longer believed in victory on Earth and started seeking an escape to another dimension. Projects related to aviation increasingly resembled attempts to break away from conventional physics. Disc-shaped craft, tests with electromagnetic fields, ideas of a gravity shield. But behind the engineering was another layer, an ideological one. They believed that humanity had lost contact with something greater, and that the Reich had to restore that connection. In 1945, strange terms began to appear in SS documents: solar intelligence, pure perception, signal interception. At first, I dismissed these as pseudoscientific constructs, but then realized it wasn't fringe figures involved, but people connected to the Ahnenerbe and to Himmler himself. They were looking for a way to establish telepathic contact with someone or something they called higher forms of consciousness. According to one version, it wasn't about gods, but about extraterrestrial intelligence that supposedly had already contacted the Aryan race at some point. Theories about this differ. Some believe it was about direct contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. Others think it was an attempt to access the memory of the planet. But the fact is that in the last years of the war, the Reich spent resources not on frontline tasks or the defense of Berlin, but on experiments with consciousness, hypnosis, radio frequencies, and anomalous zones. And then there were rumors that some of them didn't go to Argentina or Antarctica, but higher. That it wasn't just ships being developed, but vehicles designed to leave Earth. I'm not convinced by such theories, but I can't completely dismiss them either. Because if you saw how many people after the war were searching not only for escaped officers, but also for bases in places where they couldn't possibly be, you would start asking questions too. What if they really didn't plan to stay? Hundreds of witnesses, but only a few believe. We're used to thinking that all UFO encounters are stories from loners. Someone saw something, someone thought they saw something. But history also knows of mass sightings and official investigations. For example, the Fatima visions in Portugal in 1917. Tens of thousands of people saw the sun dancing in the sky, changing color and size. The church recognized it as a miracle, but ufologists think otherwise. The descriptions of the events suspiciously resemble the behavior of UFOs, or the case in Knock, Ireland, in the 19th century. Large numbers of people saw shining figures appear near the church, suspended in the air, and again, a religious explanation was given. But Jacques Vallée, a well-known ufologist, cites these cases as typical examples of the influence of an external intelligence on the human psyche. He does not deny that the phenomena are real. He simply asks why they repeat themselves, but in different forms. If in the past people saw the Virgin Mary, today they see gray humanoids, and tomorrow maybe they will see something else. They froze and outlasted death. Northern Yakutia is one of the few regions on the planet where the past hasn't been destroyed, but literally preserved. The permafrost doesn't let bodies decompose. It preserves them as if death simply put life on pause. That's what the 2018 discovery was like. A foal that died about 42,000 years ago. All its internal organs were preserved. Skin, muscles, even blood. Real blood, thickened in the vessels, but after thawing it became liquid again. Instantly, this became a worldwide sensation. Tests showed that the animal lived in the burial steps, which disappeared long ago. In essence, it became a portal to a past ecosystem. Another case is a woolly rhinoceros found in Colima. Its age is about 47,000 years. The stomach was preserved and contained pollen from wormwood, grasses, and wild herbs. Even after thousands of years, we can determine its diet and the surrounding landscape. These are not just remains, this is ancient flora preserved inside the animal's body. And in 2018, the head of a Pleistocene wolf was found. Even the brain was completely preserved. This happens extremely rarely, especially after tens of thousands of years. Researchers were able to study its structure. The age is about 1.5 years. The animal had not yet reached maturity. All these findings have one thing in common. They are more alive than they should be. This is not just archaeology, it's almost biology. And in this sense, Yakutia is a unique laboratory where time takes its time erasing things.
Лицо и фаллос древних римлян.
We raise anchor and head to Spain, where archaeologists from the University of Alicante have made an amazing discovery. They found an ancient carving on a rock depicting a face, a cornucopia, and, believe it or not, a phallus. The discovery was made at the castle of Tassal de Localo. Just imagine this carving hidden on the rocks has been there for about 2,000 years. Back in those ancient times, around 80 to 70 BC, this area was a Roman fort where the Romans defended themselves during the Civil War. On this mysterious stone, a human face is depicted, next to which a phallus and a cornucopia are carved. The carving is quite large, about 57 by 42 centimeters, but it seems unfinished because the main part is missing. And why was it created, you may ask? It could be ancient graffiti or some kind of ritual symbol. For the Romans, the phallus was a symbol of male power and the security of the state, so its presence suggests a protective function for the carving. And the cornucopia, which is also depicted there, is often associated with Roman deities of harvest and prosperity. Let's recall the myth of Heracles, who tore off the horn of the river god Archaeological and turned it into the cornucopia. So perhaps this mystical carving represents a god or goddess embodying abundance, but that's just one version. But you can write your opinion about this in the comments. What do you think? Why was a phallus depicted next to the forest in ancient Rome? Did the Romans really believe that such a carving would help protect the state? Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Artificial intelligence has found new geoglyphs. Archaeologists, with the help of artificial intelligence, have discovered new geoglyphs near the Nazca lines in Peru. These figures, depicting parrots, cats, monkeys, killer whales, and even decapitated heads, have almost doubled the number of known drawings at this mysterious archaeological site, which is about 2,000 years old. A team from Yamagata University in Japan, in collaboration with IBM Research, has found previously unknown geoglyphs that are significantly smaller in size than the giant geometric patterns created between 200 and 700 AD. These figures, dated to around 200 BC, provide new information about the transition from the Paracas culture to the Nazca, which later created such famous drawings as the hummingbird, the monkey, and the whale. According to archaeologist Masato Sakai, the use of artificial intelligence has made it possible to speed up and improve the process of mapping the geoglyphs. Thanks to this approach, the team was able to find 303 new drawings in just 6 months, which is much faster than in the previous nearly 100 years when 430 geoglyphs were discovered. Artificial intelligence helped to recognize small relief geoglyphs that are difficult to notice with the naked eye, as well as to analyze huge amounts of data collected by drones to identify potential locations for new discoveries. Drones and artificial intelligence have led to a quantum leap in the study of geoglyphs. Some of the new drawings are only 37 meters in size, so they remained unnoticed with traditional research methods. Ancient Rome and UFOs. When you think about UFOs, you think of the USA, Area 51, maybe even the USSR. But ancient Rome? Who even connects antiquity and aliens? It turns out not just science fiction writers. There is a real historical source, the Book of Omens by Gaius Julius Obsequens. It describes dozens of celestial wonders, glowing shields, floating ships in the sky, flying figures, strange creatures. Plutarch, Livy, even Pliny the Elder, they all wrote about this. From their perspective, they saw these as omens, punishments, or the will of the gods. But honestly, what could they have known about technology? If you see something round and shining in the sky and you don't know what an engine, glass, or metal is, how would you describe it? Only through myth and fear. In Rome, there was even an official priest, the Pontifex, who recorded all such things in the Annales Maximi Chronicle. And if he saw what we today call a UFO, he would write a shining sign or a burning circle in the sky. Now think about it. What if he really did see it? The conclusion is simple. The ancients were not stupid. They just described the unknown in words they understood. And we, 2,000 years later, are starting to recognize something familiar in these descriptions. What did the largest ship of antiquity look like? Humanity's need for huge warships arose long before steam engines and steel hulls. Even thousands of years ago, a fleet was considered the most important tool of influence and dominance. Through it, borders were strengthened, territories were conquered, and access to key resources was gained. It is believed that the foundation of ancient military shipbuilding was laid by the Diadochi, the successors of Alexander the Great. They were the first to build real war giants such as Polieres and Tessaraconters, comparable in scale to modern battleships. One of the most impressive ships of antiquity was the Egyptian Tessaraconter, built in the 3rd century BC by order of King Ptolemy IV Philopator. It was a real floating fortress, 130 meters long and 22 meters high. The vessel could hold about 4,000 rowers, not counting the crew, marines, and supplies. The name Tessaraconter translates as 40-oared, referring to the number of rows of oars. The exact number of oars is disputed. Researchers estimate it to be between 300 and 600. According to surviving descriptions, the ship was heavily armed. It had a ram, catapults, and fighting towers, and outwardly resembled a moving fortress. Its sides were decorated with wooden carved vines, crocodiles and other mythical creatures were painted on the stern, and the bow was crowned with a 5-meter figure of Aeolus, the ruler of the winds. Inside there were halls, statues, even libraries, and according to some sources, stables. All this spoke more of status than of practical military necessity. The Tessaraconter was more a symbol of power than an effective ship. Because of its size, it lacked proper maneuverability and couldn't even go out to sea on its own. It was towed by rowing boats. Nevertheless, its very existence became an engineering breakthrough. The Egyptian Tessaraconter is not just an archaic ship, but a vivid example of how ancient technologies could reach incredible scales. Yes, it did not become a battle legend, but it definitely went down in history as one of the most ambitious naval projects of its time. A holiday that no longer exists. I always thought that the Nazis only rewrote history, but then I realized they rewrote everything, even Christmas. In the early 1930s, a systematic campaign began in Germany to cleanse holidays of their Christian and Jewish roots. Christmas, one of the most important family holidays in Europe, became a problem for the Third Reich. Christ, Mary, angels, the Star of Bethlehem, all of this did not fit into the ideology of Aryan supremacy. They needed to keep the form, but change the content. The baby Jesus vanishes from greeting cards, replaced by the sun symbol. The Christmas tree is now called the Tree of Light. It is decorated not with ornaments and stars, but with SS runes, iron crosses, and solar symbols. Santa Claus turns into the ancient Germanic Odin, a bearded rider who brings not joy, but order. Even the carols are rewritten. The music remains, but the words are different. Not Silent Night, but an anthem to the Third Reich. The Nazis didn't just alter details. They reshaped collective memory so children would grow up in a world where even holidays focused on strength, purity, and the nation instead of love. This is no longer just ideology. It's a takeover of consciousness at the level of fairy tales, where a person knows nothing yet, but already feels. I looked at old German postcards, at greetings with runes, at Christmas trees with the SS emblem, and none of this is a parody or a fabrication. It was a real holiday, only without faith, without forgiveness, without meaning. A holiday that no longer exists and perhaps should not exist. Attack of the ancient Scythians. Archaeologists have discovered a giant hoard of bronze and iron objects in a besieged Iron Age village located in the Buk Mountains in northern Hungary. The expedition at the site of the Dédestapolchen settlement in Arepsi, which began in 2020, has yielded many valuable finds, including evidence of destruction related to a Scythian attack around the 7th century BC. The settlement was located on the top of Verepseberg mountain and occupied a strategically important position, offering a view of the surrounding lands. This is a typical feature of fortified settlements of that era. The settlement flourished in the early Iron Age being at the crossroads of cultural roots. However, archaeological evidence indicates that it was destroyed as a result of a brutal attack by the Scythians from the Pontic steppe. One of the main pieces of evidence of this attack was the hundreds of Scythian bronze arrowheads found throughout the settlement. In addition, a layer of burned buildings and melted bronze objects was discovered, indicating that the village was burned during the attack. These findings are a vivid reminder of the violence that led to the demise of this once thriving community. Ancient Roman cellar in Germany. In March 2023, archaeologists in Frankfurt am Main made a truly sensational discovery. During the excavations in the historic Hetternheim district, researchers came across a uniquely well-preserved fragment of a Roman house, a wooden staircase leading to a cellar almost 2,000 years old. This seems incredible since wood rarely survives for so long, especially in an urban environment. Hetternheim is a district with a rich history. Once, the ancient Roman city of Nida was located here, founded during the reign of Emperor Augustus. Later, in 110, AD Emperor Trajan made it the capital of the Civitas Tonensium region. The city flourished. Its population reached 10,000 people, but already in the 3rd century, due to attacks by Germanic tribes, it began to decline and was eventually abandoned. In the 20th century, most traces of Nida vanished, as old houses were dismantled and cellars destroyed during construction. That's why the discovery of a wooden staircase and floor in a Roman cellar is a real miracle. The object was in excellent condition, and archaeologists decided to preserve it. I've heard about the Amber Room since childhood. It's the most mysterious loss of World War II. Taken away, hidden, vanished somewhere between the fronts. There are dozens of theories. Almost no traces remain. But last year, reports emerged that made everyone reconsider everything. Polish historians announced that they found a new lead: archives, testimonies, old routes used for moving valuables. And everything points to one thing: the Amber Room could have been transported deep into Polish territory, possibly to one of the castles, into a tunnel, or a mine. That hasn't been established for certain. The trail, once thought dead, has reappeared. What struck me most was the reaction. It seemed like someone truly didn't want this topic raised again. They tried to hush it up, dispute it, push it aside, and the more I think about it, the more clearly I understand. The Amber Room is not just a lost artifact, it's a marker. It's a signal that much more disappeared in that war than we're used to thinking, and some things still haven't been found. When those who were not gods came from the sky. There's a strange pattern in human history. Almost every religion begins with something appearing from the sky. Someone hears a voice, someone sees a light, and someone makes contact with a shining being. Why does this sound so similar to modern descriptions of UFO encounters? Ufologist John Keel, in his book Operation Trojan Horse, writes that all these beings from the past are the same ultra-terrestrials as now. They just adapted to the culture of the era. There used to be angels, archangels, and heavenly chariots. Now there are humanoids in silver suits. The essence remains the same. Keel claimed that they can heal, predict events, and cause mass visions. The same things happened in biblical times. Some of these contacts grew into entire movements and cults, like Raelism, which directly claims that humanity was created by aliens. The founder of the sect, Claude Vorilhon, claims that he encountered a UFO, visited another planet, and received instructions from there. So where is the line between religion, a cult, and contact with a non-human intelligence? Or maybe it's all the same thing, just explained in different words. Entrance to the underground ecosystem. In central Vietnam, there is a place that even science has not yet reached. Sun Dung Cave, the largest on Earth, is more than 6 kilometers long, with a volume of 38 million cubic meters. And to understand the scale, an entire block of skyscrapers could easily fit inside. But the main thing is not the size. The main thing is that a separate ecosystem lives inside this cave. It has its own river, lakes, jungles, and stalactites that are tens of meters long. There are plants, insects, and microorganisms, many of which may be unknown to science. Light doesn't reach there, and it has its own air. Humidity, temperature, and pressure are all contained inside. It's as if the planet decided to create its own nature reserve outside of history. And what's interesting is that we still don't know where this cave ends. The final point hasn't been explored. Maybe there's another chamber further on, another biosphere bubble, or even a completely separate evolutionary path that developed parallel to ours. Rare artifacts from the Titanic. An alligator leather purse and tiny perfume bottles that still give off a strong scent are just a few of the precious artifacts found during the excavation of the sunken Titanic. The location of the warehouse with these relics is strictly classified. All that is known is that it is located in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. The shelves are filled with thousands of items, from an overturned bathtub and portholes to tiny glass buttons. Thomasina Ray, director of collections at RMS Titanic Inc., showed a bag made of alligator leather that belonged to Marion Minwell, a third-class passenger. Marion was a 63-year-old milliner who was traveling to the U.S. to see her daughter. Important documents and photographs were preserved in her bag. Her tragic fate was that she had originally booked a ticket on another ship, but ended up on the Titanic and became one of the 1,500 who perished. Among other artifacts are perfume bottles belonging to Adolf Zilfeld, a perfumer and first-class passenger who survived the disaster. The scent of the perfume can still be detected, even though it spent decades at the bottom of the ocean. The collection also includes a bottle of champagne with the drink still inside, found among a variety of kitchen utensils on the ocean floor. Titanic was a luxurious liner, and there was a huge amount of champagne on board for the first-class passengers, who enjoyed the highest level of comfort. The tableware on board reflected class divisions, rough white ceramics for third class, and exquisite plates with gold trim for first-class passengers. These items help recreate the atmosphere of life on board. The company RMS Titanic Incorporated, which is authorized to recover artifacts from the ship, recently announced its intention to retrieve the Marconi radio equipment that transmitted the distress signals. Some people believe that the sunken ship is a burial site that should be left undisturbed. However, Thomasina Ray emphasizes the importance of preserving the memory of the tragedy through these artifacts. And what do you think? Should the ship be left alone, or should we try to bring it ashore? Share your opinion in the comments below the video. Mini Stonehenge. In the English county of Derbyshire, near the town of Matlock, archaeologists discovered an ancient ceremonial complex from the Bronze Age, about 3,700 years old. This place turned out to be part of a large stone circle that had been hidden in the forest for a long time, and it all started with the curiosity of a 24-year-old student, George Bird, who became interested in a lone standing stone in the forest near his home. The stone, known as the Farlamere Standing Stone, about 2 meters tall, was previously considered a solitary monument, but at Bird's initiative, researchers decided to carefully study the surrounding area. It turned out that the stone stands on top of a natural spring, whose water flows into the Bentley Stream and then into the Derwent River. Nearby, traces of an ancient platform were found, which was probably used for rituals long before the stone itself was installed. This suggests that the place was revered for centuries and held great significance for Bronze Age communities, especially in connection with water. Archaeologists also discovered 5 more stones that once stood upright. Together, they formed an oval circle about 25 meters wide. This discovery added to the list of 25 known Bronze Age stone circles found in the Peak District, a region rich in ancient monuments, and confirms that ritual life in those times was much broader than just the famous Stonehenge. Factories under monasteries. I found out about this site by chance. It is rarely mentioned in popular sources. A factory with the codename Bergkristall. It sounds beautiful, but in fact, it is an underground complex hidden beneath a monastery in the Austrian city of St. Gorgon. When researchers first went inside, the radiation level was much higher than normal. Rare isotopes were found in the soil. The walls are covered with a layer of lead. Something was being produced there, or they were trying to hide something. Officially, it was a factory for assembling Messerschmitt jet planes, but the size and depth of the shafts and the security suggest otherwise. Something was being tested here, something they didn't want to show even to their allies. Researcher Andreas Sulz is one of the few who got access to the archives. He believes it was the German Manhattan Project, a nuclear program, secret and desperate until the very end. What scares me the most is not the fact itself, but how systematically they built it under the monastery, in silence, when it was already clear the war was lost. They still believed they could turn it all around with a single move. Or maybe it wasn't about victory. Maybe it was an attempt to destroy something if they couldn't capture it. A last insurance policy. And that's what's truly frightening. Not that they had the technology, but that they were ready to use it even when everything was already over. UFOs and hoaxes. One of the most sensational stories is the so-called Roswell alien autopsy. That very video where a strange creature with a huge head is lying on a table and doctors are pulling something out of it. Back in the 90s, the footage was shown on television to millions of people. Almost everyone believed it, but later it turned out to be staged. The creator of the video, Ray Santilli, later admitted, yes, the film is a recreation, and the real footage is supposedly lost. But he still claims that he saw the original, and the footage matches what was shown to CIA employees. And here's what's interesting. Even after admitting it was a fake, people continued to believe in it. Moreover, now this fragment is being sold as an NFT for $1 million. Why all this? What does a fake achieve? And it gives the main things: buzz, attention, belief, money. The more noise there is, the harder it is to tell what's true. The easier it is to replace reality with speculation. And here's the question. If even lies work to strengthen belief, who is blurring the lines between facts and fakes, and why? The tomb that someone tried to steal. Summer 2023, Abkhazia, Markul settlement. An ordinary plot of land in a ruined ancient crypt. It was broken into by looters. The robbers tried to take a bronze situla but were caught on the spot. The landowner took the artifact and called the archaeologists. What they discovered amazed even the most experienced specialists. The crypt from the 3rd century BC turned out to be a real golden tomb. 70 items made of pure gold, plaques, beads, elements of clothing and jewelry, rosettes, flowers, lunulae, twisted threads, and foil. The craftsmanship is exceptionally fine with jeweler-like precision. Some gold pieces show Scythian Sarmatian style, while others reflect ancient influences. It is possible that this is the work of local craftsmen who worked at the crossroads of cultures and trade routes. Archaeologists even found the remains of sacrificial animals, traces of a ritual important for the burial of a noble person. Judging by the artifacts, bones, glass beads, and bronze bracelets, the buried person was not just wealthy, he was a member of the elite, possibly a priest or a chief. The irony is that the crypt was destroyed not by time or nature, but by people just like those who once built it. The countless riches of the Incas, the treasures of Lianganati, are one of the most fascinating legends about lost wealth in South America. According to legend, the countless treasures of the Incas, gold, silver, statues, and jewels, were hidden by the military leader Ruminawi in the Lianganati Mountains in the east of modern-day Ecuador. This happened after the Spanish executed the Inca ruler Atahualpa in 1533, even though the Inca people had already begun gathering a ransom for him. Ruminawi, after hearing of Atahualpa's death, ordered the abandoned treasures hidden to keep them from the invaders. The Spanish captured him and subjected him to brutal torture, but he never revealed the secret of the treasure's location. Since then, the treasures of Lianganati have become the subject of many expeditions and searches, but none have been successful. The dense jungles, impassable mountain trails, and mists of this region still keep the secret of the Inca gold. The legend lives on, inspiring treasure hunters from all over the world to search for the most mysterious hoard in South America. Myths. If the Nazis were truly consistent in anything, it was in how they rewrote myths. Almost any ancient culture where echoes of power, ritual, or sacrifice could be found was turned into yet another Aryan source. And it didn't matter how historically accurate it was, as long as it sounded impressive. With the Vikings, things were simple. They were taken as an example of pure masculinity. Runes, swords, images of grim heroism. It was because of this logic that Himmler tried to turn the SS not into an army, but into a cult. Property with symbols, rituals, even places of power. That same Wewelsburg castle was supposed to become something like a new Valhalla, a temple for the future caste of warrior priests. With the Aztecs, it's more complicated. The geography is too distant. But the Nazis were interested in the practice of sacrifices. They were attracted to the very idea, ritual death as an act of power and submission. In the records of the Ahnenerbe, Parallels are mentioned between Germanic myths and mythologies from America. Perhaps they weren't looking for connections, but for justification. They needed to prove that human life is a resource, that a sacrifice can be sacred and controlled. And then there's Atlantis. There were no boundaries here at all. There were many theories, but they adopted one of them. Supposedly, the Atlanteans were actually the Proto-Aryans, a tall white race with technology and knowledge, destroyed by a catastrophe. And the mission of the Reich was to reclaim what was lost, to rethink the fall, and to build a new order from the old ruins. The Nazis didn't just believe these stories, they built an entire framework around them, shaping their power. That's why this remains frightening today. For them, myths weren't fairy tales, but blueprints.
Есть ли у нас шанс узнать правду?
After all this, a logical question arises. Will we ever actually find out what's really going on? Thousands of testimonies, pilot reports, military documents, strange ancient artifacts, and coincidences in myths and religions all over the world. Even NASA is no longer brushing it off, but is creating special commissions. The US Congress is holding hearings on UFOs. Something is definitely happening. But what remains behind closed doors? And that perhaps is the scariest part, because the more you dig into the topic, the more you realize not all the evidence is on the surface. And perhaps the key to understanding isn't in science fiction, but in the very structure of how humanity processes the unknown. In religion, in myths, in fears, in technologies that came too early. Like in the case of the ancient battery from Iraq, or the laser polishing of Egyptian stones, or the perfectly even blocks in Pumapunku. None of this is proof of UFOs, but they are still unexplained phenomena. Does it mean that someone visited us? Or are we just seeing in history what we want to see? The Second Tibetan Denisovan. A group of scientists studied materials found in the Baishia cave in Tibet and discovered an ancient rib. Paleoproteomic analysis showed that it belonged to a Denisovan who lived about 48 to 32,000 years ago. The main information about Denisovans is known from a few discoveries. Most of the fossils were found in the Denisova cave, after which this species of ancient humans was named. Outside this cave, Denisovans were first identified in Tibet when protein fragments from a 160,000-year-old lower jaw fragment found in 1980 were analyzed. Later, Denisovan DNA was also found in deposits from younger layers of this cave. The tooth of another representative of this ancient population was excavated in Laos. Scientists from Denmark, China, and France studied the Tibetan Baishia cave. At this high-altitude site, located at an elevation of 3,280 meters, they found numerous artifacts and animal remains indicating that the cave was visited by archaic humans for many thousands of years. Among the more than 2,500 animal bones and teeth found in the cave were blue sheep, yaks, Tibetan gazelles, and horses. Bones of ancient hyena, gray wolf, snow leopard, pheasant, and golden eagle were also identified. Almost 20% of the bones show anthropogenic traces. During the excavation, archaeologists discovered a rib fragment over 5 centimeters long, which broke into 2 pieces. Biomolecular analysis showed that the fossil belonged to a Denisovan. Dating by the cultural layer determined the age of the find to be 324,800 years, indicating that Denisovans visited Bolshia Cave more than 100,000 years ago. A storm revealed an ancient ritual. In the spring, after a storm, a coastal cliff collapsed on the shore of the Baltic Sea. A block of clay, tapering downward, concealed something inside that no one would have found without the help of nature itself. It lay underground for almost 3,000 years and turned out to be in perfect condition. It is 24 centimeters long, decorated with ornaments, stars, crescents, and symbols resembling signs of the sun and moon. According to archaeologists, the weapon had ritual significance and was possibly used in ceremonies related to the sun cult, while the ornaments correspond to the astral symbolism of the Bronze Age. The place where it was found was just a beach, and nothing about it suggested what was hidden there. Just clay, just a crumbling shore. And here it is, the object that lay in darkness for 3 millennia, coming into the light for just a few seconds before it could have been carried away by the water. Sometimes archaeology is not just about excavations. It's when the earth itself chooses the moment to show you something important. The casket, with relics of Polish monarchs. This elegant casket with the inscription Izabela Czartoryska is not just an antique item, but a symbol of Polish history in its own right. In 1800, Princess Izabela Czartoryska placed in it a unique collection of relics linked to Polish kings and major historical events. A total of 73 items were kept in the casket, ranging from personal belongings of monarchs to fragments of weapons and clothing, symbolizing national heritage and the spirit of resistance. Izabela saw it as her mission to preserve Polish identity during the country's partitions. Her casket became part of Poland's first museum, the Temple of Sibylla, established in Puławy, where she invited guests to remember the glory of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Unfortunately, like many national treasures, the casket did not escape a tragic fate. In 1939, during the Nazi invasion of Poland, it was looted, and to this day, some of the relics are considered lost. Betrayal that cost a life. The story of Anna Frank has always been for me a symbol of innocence that was destroyed. But recently I learned details that made this story even more terrifying. All this time, it was believed that Anna and her family were betrayed by chance. One of the neighbors, an informant, a coincidence. But recent research suggests otherwise. In 2022, a group of historians concluded that most likely, Anna Frank's hiding place was given up by a Jewish notary, Arnold Vandenberg, a man who tried to save his own family by giving the Nazis the addresses of other hiding places. When I learned about this, my first feeling was shock. But then came the realization. This is not just the tragedy of a single family. This is a reflection of the entire reality created by the Reich. A reality where fear is stronger than memory, and survival becomes betrayal, where even those who were supposed to be together end up on opposite sides. Anna Frank died in the Bergen-Belsen camp in February 1945. Just a few weeks before the end of the war, her diary outlived her and became one of the most honest documents of that time, because Anna wrote about simple things, dreams, resentments, hopes, about a life that was stolen from her by those who tried to build a world without compassion. By the way, I personally visited this camp last year. Almost nothing is left of it. Only the foundations of the barracks where the prisoners lived. Everything else has disappeared. After the camp was liberated, the British troops burned it to the ground. No buildings, no barracks, no photographs, only empty space. Perhaps this was done intentionally to erase the horror from the face of the earth, or so that no one could ever fully understand. And only the pines around, tall and gloomy, remember. They were planted back when all of this was happening. A city that shouldn't exist. In the south of modern Iraq, amid the sun-scorched earth, lie the ruins of Eridu. Once, canals flowed here, craftsmen worked here, and the fields were irrigated according to a precisely calculated system. Recent studies have shown that Eridu is not just an ancient city. This is possibly the very first city on Earth. According to satellite data, archaeologists have found more than 4,000 canals and about 700 farms arranged in a strictly organized pattern. The canals are up to 9 kilometers long, a branching irrigation network. This is infrastructure that scattered tribes could not have built. It required engineers, workers, and a management system. And all of this existed thousands of years before the Sumerians, Egyptians, and Akkadians appeared. Strangely enough, the region was abandoned, which is why this entire ancient system has remained almost untouched. It's as if our modern city were buried under ash, and someone found it completely intact 6,000 years later. Eridu is mentioned in the Sumerian king list as the first city to which kingship was given from the heavens. When myth coincides with geodesy, it gets a little unsettling. A vessel in the shape of a bull. In Salnica, Bulgaria, archaeologists discovered ritual artifacts over 6,000 years old. The excavations took place in the prehistoric settlement of Salnica, located near Provadia. This site was an important center for salt production, a valuable resource of that time. The first inhabitants extracted brine from salt springs, evaporating it in ceramic pots placed in pits. Over time, they developed special furnaces that allowed them to process up to 30 kilograms of salt at a time, which significantly increased the scale of production. However, a series of earthquakes undermined the economy and defense of the settlement, which led to its decline. The recent discovery of a ritual sacrifice pit has provided new insight into the inhabitants' spiritual practices. Among the artifacts was a zoomorphic vessel in the shape of a bull, symbolizing strength and fertility, as well as a ceramic vessel with geometric patterns and miniature figurines. Remains of ancient dwellings of the Evrokiski house were found, which adds to the historical context of Salnica. The Cockno stone, a massive stone located near the city of Clydebank in Scotland, is covered with intricate carved patterns consisting of spirals, circles, and lines, and is still considered one of the most mysterious archaeological finds in Scotland. After conducting numerous analyses, scientists confirmed that the stone is about 5,000 years old. The patterns on the Cockno stone have attracted attention because of their uniqueness and complexity. Some researchers interpret these symbols as an ancient map of the starry sky, suggesting the stone may have been used for astronomical purposes. In their opinion, the spirals and circles may represent stars, planets, or even the trajectories of celestial bodies, which could have helped the ancient inhabitants of Scotland track the movement of heavenly objects. The stone could also have served as a place for rituals or ceremonies related to worshiping gods or nature spirits. However, there is still no consensus about what role this artifact played in the lives of ancient people. Supporters of the paleocontact theory suggest that the patterns on the Cockno stone may be evidence of contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. In their opinion, the complex symbolism of the images may indicate interaction with a more advanced culture, possibly of extraterrestrial origin. The Great Bell of Damazedi. The Great Bell of Damazedi is considered the largest bell ever made. It was cast in 1484 by order of King Damazedi of Myanmar and installed at the famous Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon, one of the most sacred places for Buddhists in the country. According to historical records, the bell weighed over 290 tons, making it a record holder among others of its kind. However, the fate of the bell turned out to be tragic. In 1608, the Portuguese mercenary and adventurer Felipe de Brito captured Yangon and decided to take the bell away to melt it down for weapons. While transporting it across the Bago River, he misjudged the structure's weight. The bell overturned the barge and sank. Since then, it has never been found, despite numerous attempts. Today, the Great Damazedi Bell remains part of Myanmar's legends and a source of national pride. Its story is a reminder of how culture, spirituality, and greed can intertwine in a single artifact, the fate of which remains a mystery to this day. King or demon? In the Museum of Knightly Arms in the Lyceum, there is a strange artifact. It was clearly not made for battle. It has horns, a toothy grin, and a bristly chin. It doesn't look like a warrior's helmet, but rather a jester's mask. But according to the documents, this helmet belonged to Henry. Yes, that very same Henry, one of the most powerful and controversial monarchs of England. The helmet was part of the armor gifted by Emperor Maximilian I in honor of their military alliance. It was made by the famous armorer Susenhofer. The engraving was done by a jeweler from Augsburg, so there's nothing frivolous about it. This was an official gift, custom made with the highest level of craftsmanship. Why would the king want such a face? There are many theories, from a theatrical ceremonial image to esoteric symbolism. Maybe it's an allegory, a demon that power itself could become, or maybe it's just a particular sense of humor. Interestingly, all the armor vanished except this helmet, which may have survived for centuries due to its strange, frightening appearance. An incredible floor mosaic. In the Turkish village of Salkai, located in eastern Anatolia, he accidentally discovered an ancient floor mosaic while planting saplings. The mosaic, covering an area of 84 square meters, is believed to date back to the late Roman or early Byzantine period. It impresses with its size, intricate geometric patterns, and depictions of many animals and plants, such as a lion, mountain goat, greyhound, deer, bear, and Anatolian leopard. The farmer, Mehmed Amin Swab, who discovered the artifact, reported the find to the local museum authorities and the gendarmerie. Excavations then began with support from Turkey's Ministry of Culture and Tourism. During the work, the ruins of a church and a wine cellar were found next to the mosaic, confirming its historical value. The mosaic is well preserved and is an important discovery for the region.
Суровые реалии Древнего Египта.
During archaeological excavations in Gatse, on the territory of an ancient Egyptian gold mine, iron shackles about 2,200 years old were found. These heavy shackles became direct evidence of ancient accounts describing the cruel treatment of people who worked in the mines during the Ptolemaic dynasty. The shackles were discovered in a room that served as an ancient storage area. Inside, there were tools for processing ore, fragments of pottery, and 2 sets of shackles. One of them consisted of 7 ring locks connected by iron links, and the other had 4 links and damaged hoops. Their design is strikingly similar to the shackles found in the silver mines of Laurion in Greece, which suggests a transfer of technology and possibly forced labor methods from the Greek world to Egypt. Archaeologist Barangi Redden notes that this discovery confirms ancient texts describing the fates of prisoners of war and criminals who were sent to forced labor. The mine in Gotse was active in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE during a period of intense mining expansion under the Ptolemies. Residential houses, streets, and even baths were found on its territory. But behind the facade of organized life, harsh conditions were hidden. Interestingly, archaeologists also found tablets and shards with inscriptions indicating that some workers were paid while others worked under strict control. Sometimes history speaks much more quietly than we are used to, without conspiracies, without symbols, without runes. Just a letter, a couple of paragraphs written 10 years before it all began. In 1922, Albert Einstein wrote a letter to his sister. He says that the atmosphere in Germany is getting heavier, that there is a sense of panic in the air, and that despite his scientific recognition, he feels he no longer belongs here. He will leave and be saved, but thousands won't. Einstein's letter isn't a prophecy, just an honest view from someone who knew darkness doesn't appear suddenly. It rises slowly from everyday words, from ideas, from symbols that at first seem abstract but then become weapons. When I read this letter, it struck me because against the background of everything we've discussed, artifacts, rituals, myths, it sounds especially sober. Einstein wasn't talking about secret programs, he just knew what fear looked like. A refuge in the jungle. Imagine a group of people renting a part of the Amazon for 1,000 years, including not only the land but also the airspace and even the natural resources. This isn't the plot of a movie, but the real story of the nation of Kailasa, a self-proclaimed state created by a fugitive guru accused of abductions and violence. He proclaimed himself the pontiff of Hinduism and fled from India, declaring a new island his sovereign state. In 2024, his followers began making agreements with tribes in Bolivia, promising help and money. One of the Bauer communities signed a contract for 25 years, but later it turned out that the documents stated a lease term of 1,000 years. When this was revealed, an international scandal broke out. The Bolivian authorities arrested the participants, annulled all agreements, and expelled the instigators. But a troubling thought remained. If someone can come with money and try to lease the Amazon, who will be next? This is not a story about sectarians. It's a story about how being swayed by resources can lead to the loss of an entire territory. The first of its kind Bronze Age fortress. In the Romanian forests of Neams County, archaeologists discovered an ancient fortress about 5,000 years old, and modern LiDAR technology helped them do it. Thanks to drones equipped with laser scanners, it was possible to see through the dense vegetation and get a clear image of the structure that had been hidden from human eyes for centuries. The fortress dates back to the transitional period from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age, a time when people had just begun to build fortified settlements. LiDAR revealed that this was a well-designed and powerful structure, moats hundreds of meters long, earthen ramparts, and a strategically advantageous location on high ground. Everything points to advanced knowledge and organized labor among the ancient builders. Only with the help of modern technology can we truly understand the scale and structure of ancient monuments. These are not just ruins, they are traces of a complex and sophisticated civilization that we are only beginning to rediscover. In 2002, declassified CIA documents were made public. One of them was simply titled Report on Noah's Ark. It mentions a strange object on the slope of Mount Ararat. The formation looks like the hull of a huge ship. Rumors about this place have been circulating since the mid-20th century. But here's what's strange. The CIA conducted aerial reconnaissance, then brought in specialists, all for the sake of this anomaly. According to the official version, nothing special was found in the photos, but dozens of requests to publish the images, especially from 1974, were denied. Why hide the images if there's nothing on them? Later, researchers collected soil samples from this place. They found marine organisms in them. But Mount Ararat is at an altitude of 4,420 meters. Does this mean that water really was here? The same water from the biblical flood? It might seem like just a coincidence, but there are just too many such coincidences. For too long, people have tried to avoid this place. The giant jade dragon. Chinese archaeologists have discovered the largest jade dragon of the Hongshan Neolithic culture. The artifact was found in the Yuan Baoshan stone tomb, located in Aohan Banner, Inner Mongolia. The jade dragon measures 15.8 centimeters in length, 9.5 centimeters in width, and 3 centimeters in thickness. The dragon is a unique find, unlike anything else found in this region. The excavations also revealed architectural remains, fragments of human bones, tombs, hearths, and various artifacts, including jade and painted ceramic items. Among them were tripod bowls and basins. Carbon-14 dating showed that the site belongs to the late Hongshan culture and dates back more than 5,000 years. Wooden sculpture of Christ. In the Belarusian village of Nesutici, in the semi-ruined chapel of the Church of St. Archangel Michael, restorers discovered a wooden sculpture of the crucified Christ. The find is more than 250 years old, and experts call it a real miracle. After all these years, it has hardly been damaged. Research has shown that the sculpture was carved from pear wood, presumably in the 17th century. The exact origin is still unknown, but there are theories that it could have been made in Italy or Prussia. Such finds are rare. They remind us how many secrets may still be hidden even in forgotten corners. The Führer's last teeth. When I read about the Argentine bases and Hitler's escape, there was always one question that stayed with me. Is there even a single direct piece of evidence that he actually died in 1945? In April 2024, the FSB published a photo that answered this question. The picture shows a jaw, remains officially recognized as Hitler's remains. They are kept in a cigarette box, 9 teeth, all authentic. French forensic expert Philippe Sharapov compared this jaw with X-rays from 1944. The match is absolute. Moreover, traces of cyanide were found on the metal of the dentures. This confirms the suicide theory. Poison, capsule, gunshot, just like in the official sources. It's a strange feeling. For so many years, we searched for conspiracies, theories, legends about an escape. But it all turned out to be much simpler. No tunnels, no doubles, no submarines. Just a jaw, a dusty archive, decades without publicity, as if no one wanted this subject to be put to rest once and for all. Maybe because reality isn't as spectacular as the myth. A mineral that no longer exists. This stone weighs only 1.6 carats, but its price is literally beyond estimation. Kyotoite is the rarest mineral on Earth. It was discovered by chance in Myanmar at an ordinary market. Scientists found out that its composition and crystal lattice are not found anywhere else in nature, at all. Never before or since. Its color is amber brown. The structure is like that of an alien object. Under a microscope, there are hollow tubes inside, formed by pressure and time. Today, Hayatuit is kept in a Los Angeles museum. It's not just a stone, it's a mistake of nature, and possibly a trace of an ancient geological event that science doesn't even suspect yet. But what if this mineral isn't just a coincidence of nature, but something deeper? What if its composition hides answers to questions we haven't even asked yet? A monster unable to handle the changes. In the Miocene Amazon, 8 million years ago, there was a predator swimming around that was closer in scale to a dinosaur than to modern reptiles. Purosaurus, a giant crocodile, 15 to 16 meters long. That's almost 2 saltwater crocodiles stacked on top of each other. It weighed 10 tons, a bite force of 11 tons per square inch. That's almost 3 times more than a Tyrannosaurus. It could crush the shell of a turtle the size of a Volkswagen. But Purosaurus didn't hunt near the shore like modern crocodiles. It would leap vertically out of the water like an orca and grab its prey, giant fish, snakes, and even mammals. It was a killing machine in the water. Other crocodiles shared its territory as well. For example, Murasuchus with his duck-billed snout. It seems the ecosystem was so rich that even monsters found a place to coexist. But it all ended when the geography changed. The Isthmus of Panama blocked the way to the ocean, the rivers of the Amazon became shallow, and the climate grew drier, and Purosaurus disappeared, just like everything it fed on. Today, its relatives are dwarf caimans. They survived, but the giant did not, because strength means nothing if the world around you disappears. We're missing something. We find mummies whose blood still flows after 40,000 years, stone terraces built before the rise of civilization, minerals that existed only once, cities, canals, helmets, artifacts. All of this lay buried in the ground, gathering dust in museums or hidden underwater. Some of them we can't explain, others we explain, but with too much confidence. Amazing! Sometimes it's brought out by a storm, sometimes by frost, sometimes by chance. But each such fragment seems to repeat the same question. But what if everything wasn't the way we think? What if history isn't a straight line, but a jagged trail in the sand, part of which has already been washed away? We're searching for answers. Maybe it's time to start noticing the questions. How did the pre-Romans write? In the Spanish province of Leon, archaeologists made a discovery that could change our understanding of early writing on the Iberian Peninsula. In the ancient settlement of La Peña del Castro, a spindle whorl, a small object used in weaving, was discovered with an inscription engraved in the Celtiberian alphabet. The artifact dates back to around the 1st century BC. This is one of the northernmost and earliest finds of this kind. Before the arrival of the Romans, writing was hardly used in these lands, so the inscription became a real sensation. Scientists suggest that the text could have been a sign of ownership or had symbolic meaning. For example, it could indicate the status of the owner. Interestingly, the spindle whorl is made from local talc, which means it was produced locally. It was found in a storeroom where there were also baskets with seeds, tools, and even remnants of dried meat. All this indicates a fairly advanced domestic life and economy. This find is important evidence that the local cultures were much more complex than previously thought, and had already begun to use writing by that time.
Когда НЛО становилось государственной проблемой.
Antiquity is not the place where you would expect bureaucracy recording UFOs, but in Rome, it existed. The priests had direct access to power, and they kept official chronicles of omens. Everything that happened in the sky was perceived as a message from the gods, and if a blazing shield flew over the city, it was considered a political signal. Gaius Julius Obsequens, a Roman historian, collected such reports in the Prodigiorum Liber, and the list looked eerily familiar. Glowing discs, moving lights, figures in the sky that hovered and disappeared. This is not folklore. This is official state reporting. Sometimes, based on these phenomena, the Senate would overturn decisions, start wars, or, on the contrary, make peace. Because if a sign comes from above, you are obliged to respond to it. One such sign was the disappearance of King Romulus. The founder of Rome was supposedly taken up into the sky, right in front of the crowd. He didn't die, he didn't run away, he literally ascended. So Rome has a god founder who came from up there. This isn't about whether they believed in UFOs. It's about how seriously they took them. The ancients couldn't explain what it was, but they didn't ignore it either. And today, we do the opposite. We know things aren't clear, but we act like everything's fine. Ceramic figurines from Mexico? In 1944, thousands of ceramic figurines were discovered in the Mexican city of Acámbaro, which have since sparked heated debates among scientists. These figurines depict people, animals, and even dinosaurs, which has led to speculation about possible contact between ancient civilizations and dinosaurs, or the existence of a civilization with incredible knowledge of the ancient world. Some supporters of alternative theories even propose hypotheses about extraterrestrial origin or influence. However, the authenticity of the Acámbaro figurines is seriously doubted by most scientists. Many researchers believe that these artifacts may be modern forgeries created to attract attention or for commercial gain. The lack of reliable dating in archaeological context increases skepticism about their authenticity. Diamond drills 2,000 years ago, scientists made an astonishing discovery. Ancient craftsmen were already using diamond drills to shape hard stones 2,000 years ago. This became clear after analyzing 51 beads found in a burial site in Rabat, in present-day Uzbekistan. The burial dates back to the 2nd century BC to the 1st century AD and is associated with the Yuai culture that existed in historical Bactria. The beads were made of carnelian, agate, and garnet, stones that are difficult to work with even using modern tools. Research using an electron microscope showed that 41 beads have traces characteristics specifically of diamond drilling. Moreover, the craftsman most likely first used a single drill to start the hole and then switched to a more complex tool with 2 diamond points. Previously, it was believed that the technique of diamond drilling originated in the Indus civilization, in the area of modern India and Pakistan. But now it is becoming clear that similar technologies developed independently in different parts of Asia. Interestingly, although such methods are also found in Tanzania, Uzbek beads are made using a special technique that has not been found anywhere else. Hollow Earth, the last door. If someone had told me about this 10 years ago, I would have just laughed. Vikings, Antarctica, the underground world, Nazis who went inside the planet. All of this sounded like crazy science fiction, but the deeper I dive into documents, diaries, and declassified calculations, the more I realize this isn't just nonsense. It was part of an ideological construct. According to one theory, the Nazis believed in the existence of a hollow Earth, a space inside the planet where an ancient civilization was preserved, a paradise, a Gartha, an inner world. Interpretations differ, but the essence is the same. It's supposedly a place of power that has escaped destruction in time. There are indeed mentions in the archives of an expedition to Antarctica, planes that disappeared without a trace, and pilots' stories about a mysterious glow that came not from the sky, but from beneath their feet. Some of these ideas may have originated in the Ahnenerbe, while others appeared later among those who were fleeing. It doesn't matter who created them. What matters is how these myths fit into the worldview, not as a fairy tale, but as a refuge. Under the church where it all began, Jerusalem, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, one of the most revered places in the Christian world, it is believed that this is where Jesus was buried. But for a long time, archaeologists debated how much this actually matches the biblical description. Everything changed when scientists from the University of Rome dug beneath the church floor. Instead of a tomb or artifact, they uncovered an ancient garden. Layers of soil between the stone walls, traces of a terrace with a cultural layer, and most importantly, pollen from grapevines and olive trees. All of this matches the text from the Gospel of John. In the place where he was crucified, there was a garden. If the radiocarbon analysis confirms the age of the find, it will be the first direct archaeological confirmation from the text of the New Testament. Exactly. Not theological, not symbolic, but physical. In addition, during the excavation, they found an ancient marble altar that disappeared during a fire in the 19th century. It had always been in the church, just facing the wall. On the front side, there was graffiti from tourists, and on the back, a unique mosaic made with a technique known only to Vatican craftsmen. No sensationalism, no mysticism, just facts. But sometimes these facts speak louder than any legends. Mysterious clay spheres. In Turkmenistan, in the Karakum Desert, archaeologists have resumed excavations of the ancient city of Gonur-Tepe and found something very unusual. After a 3-year break caused by the pandemic, scientists returned to studying this most important Bronze Age site. Gonur-Tepe is the ancient center of the mysterious land of Margiana, which existed about 4,000 years ago. One of the most unexpected finds was clay balls with pieces of pottery stuck into them. The balls were arranged in a certain order and apparently were used in rituals. Nothing like this had been found here before. Strange cone-shaped objects made of minerals and covered with glaze were also discovered. They may also have had ritual significance or were used for divination. Interestingly, similar objects have been found over a vast area from the Gulf of Oman to India and even in Western Turkey. This supports the theory of the existence of a Central Asian sphere of interaction, when different cultures actively exchange knowledge, traditions, and technologies. But what if all of this is true? Let's be honest, what if all this isn't just a convergence of myth and fantasy? What if someone really is watching us? What if we're not the pinnacle of evolution, but just one of the projects, one of the experiments in a long series? What if ancient people really did communicate with those we call gods, but in fact they were actually in contact with those who came from somewhere else? What if religion, prophecies, signs in the sky, even the very origin of humanity are all parts of one big story that has been hidden from us? Or maybe it's a story we're just not ready to understand yet. Maybe they're not ready to make direct contact with us. There are too many coincidences, too many mistakes in official history, too many phenomena that are easier to ignore. But one day all the pieces might come together. After all, as Carl Sagan wrote, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Do not steal, but they stole. In the quiet English village of Little Stipping, someone broke into the church at night. They stole several old Victorian-era frescoes, and among them was the most ironic of all, a plaque with the 10 Commandments. Among them, of course, was the inscription, "Do not steal." The church warden, 80-year-old Beezus Harwood, just shrugged. Maybe the thieves wanted to study the commandments better, but apparently they didn't finish reading. They took not only the fresco, but also an old painting of Moses, and even a regular extension cord. Maybe it just happened to be nearby. Or maybe it was considered a sacred object too. The police, of course, have started an investigation. But the story itself is already almost a joke, when reality makes the plot better than any script. The story of Port Arthur Prison. About an hour and a half's drive from Hobart, the capital of Tasmania, lies one of the darkest places in Australian history, the Port Arthur Penal Settlement. From 1830 to 1877, the most dangerous criminals of the British Empire were held here. After Great Britain lost the ability to send prisoners to the United States, they chose the distant lands of Australia. Initially, Port Arthur was just a timber station, but soon it turned into a full-fledged complex with 60 buildings including prisons, churches, solitary confinement cells, and even well-kept gardens, all created by the convicts themselves. More than 12,500 people suffered here. The conditions were harsh: underground cells, isolation in complete darkness and silence, and hard physical labor. All of this broke people's will and left deep scars on their minds. One of the most chilling stories is the murder of Joseph Shuttleworth in the prison church. He was hacked to death by another inmate while they were working. The motive remained unknown, and on the island of the dead where prisoners were buried, one of the convicts allegedly encountered the devil himself. Since the prison was closed, stories about ghosts began to appear here, from the sounds of footsteps and children's laughter to apparitions of women and soldiers. Port Arthur is considered one of the most haunted places in Australia. Today it is an open-air museum and a UNESCO heritage site. But even on a sunny day, there is something unsettling here: the memory of those who spent their last days within these walls. I would appreciate it if you leave a kind comment below the video and share this video with your friends. And I strongly recommend you watch the previous video about the alien discoveries made by archaeologists, which didn't get the attention they deserved. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.